And to some of you, it is the middle of the night. So I want to thank you for coming on live to the Buildathon 2026 live training. Joined here with me this morning is Michael McGuire, who will be your trainer for the morning. We have a full agenda for you this morning, going right into this afternoon. So, just want to start off by sharing with you guys just a little bit about the competition again, and then I will hand over to Michael, who will take you through the live training. So once again, welcome to everybody, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us here live this morning. Okay, so as I said, Buildathon 2026. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's our first global student event. We're very, very excited. And this event, as you all have signed up for, is taking place on August the 18th and 19th. So the countdown is on. So thank you for joining this live session this morning. It is a two-day event based on Autodesk, Forma Site Design and Revit. And it is a competition that is going to give you guys some real world experience of working with eco technology. A team challenge, you're all part of a team. And within that team, you have 2 days over the course of August the 18th and the 19th to put together your project for final delivery. To support you in that, we have a designated Buildathon website. On this website, which you will have already seen, this is where you've registered, but please keep coming back to this website because we have a news section where we're updating news in relation to the Buildathon. We have global training dates that are posted on a regular basis. And this is the first of quite a few different live sessions. There are different languages happening across the world. Also, I would encourage you to just keep an eye on the supporting material. There are links there to videos and to content that is going to support you on the journey as you prepare for this competition. Also, our social media. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we are posting quite regularly and sending out tips and tricks on the Buildathon. So please stay connected with us as we progress towards the competition. Just something I want to remind you guys as well is you are going to need access to the student software. So we do encourage you to have this downloaded well in advance of the competition date on August the 18th. So Forma Site Design and Revit. The links are here, and if anybody needs the link, let me know. But it's on the Autodesk Education website. Also, referring back to the Buildathon website, please have a look at that as well. As I said earlier, there is a lot of content on there and a lot of support for the competition. In addition, we have put together an app, a Buildathon app. And the purpose of this is to reach out to you guys who may not be on email throughout the summer period. So if you have not signed up for the app already, please do so. The reason I would encourage you to do this is we are posting every week, and if you are part of the app community, you get access to some very, very exclusive tips and tricks in relation to Revit, in relation to Forma Site Design, and how to think about your project and what are the best steps and what it is you need to be preparing at the different stages as we get closer and closer to the competition date. And without further ado, I will now hand you over to Michael, who is a lecturer in digital construction and BIM from Glasgow Caledonian University, and he will take you through some live training over the next few hours. And I want to wish you all luck. And thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just go ahead and share the screen. Just a little reminder of what we're going to cover today. So first off, we would look at the Revit user interface and some navigation. If you're not brand new to Revit, then maybe this first little part is just a nice way for you to realise the skill set you've already got. That's great. Maybe boost some confidence. But for those that are joining who don't know Revit super well, then this recording will serve as the kind of training for everybody really to kind of boost their skills and be able to take part in the competition. So let's look at Revit, the user interface, the project browser, the properties palette. We'll see why as we go. View controls and navigation. Area plans. Area plans are going to be super important in this test project, if you like, in this competition. You don't need to use Revit for this part. You might want to use AutoCAD. If you want to use AutoCAD, that's absolutely fine, but we'll be covering using Revit. In my opinion, it gives a nicer flow and it gives a nicer presentation of what I would be looking to do if it was me or I had some students that were taking part in this. So looking at creating area plans and area schemes, understanding area and floor levels and how to check that you're meeting the requirements of the competition. And at the same time, creating simple buildings. So we're going to look at maybe how to introduce levels into that, grids, if you would like, and the basic architectural components, walls, floors, roofs, doors, etc. Once we've done that part, this might be one way of you designing a concept. If you're working in teams, if someone has more strength in Revit or understanding conceptual design, they might want to work in the Revit part. If other people in the team have more skills in Forma or environmental analysis, then there's maybe a nice little break there that some people do the conceptual design and pass that over to the other part of the team where they do the Forma part. Or if you have 2 or 3 people in the team, whatever your team number is, you might want to design a concept each and then use the analysis tools to analyze each of the concepts and decide and pick which one is actually the best. So we'll look at the introduction to Forma site design. So we can look at creating projects, creating a new site, understanding that site and how the environment sits, environmental context, so looking at sun path, wind, climate, etc., and creating the building that you've already created in Revit. So here's where the link comes. So if we've created a basic concept in Revit of where all the spaces and everything go, then we want to recreate that in Forma site design and analyze that shape, that form. And then we can look at multiple proposals and then the analysis of that. So some daylight, solar, wind, etc. Maybe even some roads and traffic noise and so on. And then we'll look at how to analyze that. Once you have a concept from Revit, that could be 2, 3, or 4 concepts in Forma, because the site that you pick might allow you to sit at different locations on the site. You might also be able to try different orientations of that building on the site. So we'll look at all of this today. And then how do you then best communicate that? So just to make sure that when you capture the views, you want to show the best image, think of composition for that building, but also think about things like the tools palette that's available in Forma and just making sure you capture all of the results in the same window. Give the judges that are going to judge your piece of work the best opportunity to see the strengths in your work. So if you don't, for example, show them how much energy, solar photovoltaic energy you are generating, then they can't make a judgment on that. So just make the job really, really easy for the judges to say, this is a good piece of work. Look at the energy or the wind or how they've designed it for light, whatever it might be. Okay, so this is what we're going to look at today. I've had a little play around, and what I'm going to do is recreate something like this with you. So I've already started in my head, and this is a little training that we sent out already, or we can access it from the site. I'll make sure this is available. But if we start to look at some rooms that we might expect to see in a building, so we might expect to see a reception area, we might be asked for some meeting rooms and private spaces. We might want to have 2 staircases or one staircase, one lift. We might want 3 WC per story. Possibly there's a plant room, and we can go on and on and on with a huge list of rooms. But if we limit you to a footprint of a building that's not allowed to be any more than, let's say for this example, 600 square meters. Okay, so you have an opportunity to design a reception area. The area that you'll be given might be 49 or 50 square meters, whatever it is. You can design that however you want for any length or width. What the competition is going to be strict on is that you do not go over the maximum area for any room or for the footprint of the building. So we're looking for 5 small meeting rooms. Okay, so we'll look at the area of each of those meeting rooms is maybe 15 square meters. So if we've got 5 of them, then I'm thinking that's going to be 75 square meters in total. We don't need all of them to be on the same level. So this is where the design comes in. Do you put 2 meeting rooms on the ground, 2 meeting rooms on the first floor? In the UK, the first floor is the first floor above the ground base level, and maybe 1 room in the second floor. Do you do 3 on the ground or 2 on one of the upper floors? This is where all of the different teams will probably spend most of their time is designing these layouts so that it doesn't go above the maximum footprint of a building. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of that today. I want to work through that. So if I move this away, and I can bring my Revit that I was playing around with in the last couple of days, preparing for exactly this session, I've started to put some of these spaces together, and I'll repeat everything in this, but I want to show you some of my end results of how I've been working. So I've managed to get on the ground floor, the reception area. It asks for 2 collaboration spaces, a boardroom. There's 1 staircase, and at the other end of the building is another staircase, and we have some circulation space in between, maybe just a hallway. So we'll look at how to achieve this. And then we have some meeting rooms that are here, a print room, a server room, and an office. And what you'll notice is at the end of the building here, it's not perfectly square like it is on the west side, okay? That's because we have a building footprint maximum size of 600 square meters. I can't fit in any other rooms because it will go bigger than 600 square meters. And each of the spaces that are here must be maximum the space size that you were allowed. So we can start to look at this space here, for example, and say, actually, the maximum I'm allowed for a collaboration space is 50 square meters. Do you see? So this wouldn't do, okay? So you are allowed to be smaller than these area sizes that you're given. So we can start to work with our models, and we can start to change the spaces so that they're exactly 50. That would be perfect. They're allowed to be smaller than 50. The last tip I'll give before we start to move in and look at some of the other iterations, how I've developed and shaped some of the spaces. The bigger the building that you can achieve, then the more photovoltaic solar energy you can generate. So if you are allowed 600 square meters of a building footprint, you may want to use all 600 square meters as best you can. But what you can't do are leave spaces, huge amounts of spaces that are not being used. Okay? So here, for example, behind the store is about the correct size. But what we can't do is say, well, I want to make the store twice as big and maybe make the store out to here so it's a nice big building. You can't do that. Each space has to be the size required that's specified when you get the brief or smaller. Okay, and I will reiterate, this is the part that will probably take the most amount of time. Take your time to figure out what is the best arrangement for spaces. There are judges who are going to judge on architectural layout and design. So yes, there are prizes for the best photovoltaic or the best solar energy, the best daylight, the best response to the site. Lots of things to look at, but also how you arrange the spaces, for example. So I tweaked this space. You'll notice here the reception sits, and then we have all of the circulation. In this iteration here, I actually moved the reception so that it sits in as part of the circulation space, for example. Okay, so that might help architecturally. The architect team that are judging might think that's a better concept to do that. It certainly uses less circulation space. So we can see these two spaces here. So it uses a lot less. So we have 40, 50, 60, about 70. And here we have 88 square meters. So a lot extra circulation space. Okay. And then with little tweaks and little iterations, what you'll notice is I just change the position or the orientation instead of 6 meters by 7 meters. So 6 meters horizontally and 7 meters deep. Maybe 7 meters horizontally works and 6 meters deep. Okay, so you'll notice the other thing that I was able to do if I create my concepts like this is I can bring out the perimeter of the building and add and check the area. So if I'm allowed 600 square meters, what you'll notice here is this building uses 535.31. We can look here, it's 513. We can look here, it's 499. So we've got less area used here on the building footprint on the ground floor. We still have lots more spaces to add, but what I thought was I can go over the whole process of how I was tackling something like this. And then hopefully, if you're new to Revit or you've not used area plans before, then hopefully that will allow you to kind of follow along and achieve something similar. Okay, so I won't save. I'm going to start with a completely brand new architectural file. So we'll just go with the default standard template. And there we go. So obviously within Revit, we have the ribbon at the top. And hopefully people are familiar with that. But if not, this is where you're going to find the tools that we need. So we've got the architecture tab. We'll be using the wall tool, for example. We'll be using the area plan tools that are here in a bit. All of these will open up once we begin the area plan. We have the properties palette here. So if we want to change the properties of anything, and then the project browser. So the project browser is where all your views are going to be located. Currently, we have our floor plan level 0, and then we have these little markers that are identifying the north, the south, the east, and the west. And these, if we start to create elevation views later, if we create a building sitting here, then these elevation views would automatically generate the views from the north, the south, the east, and the west. Typically, the building that we're going to create for this template is going to be a bit bigger than the default size that it expects for here. So it's quite easy at a later stage to just grab these and then move them to where you need them to be. So while I work a lot in conceptual design, I tend to work on the outside of these little elevation markers, ignoring them for now and maybe just working in this space that's here. Okay. So first thing to look at would be if you yourself wanted to draw, sketch, list, use an Excel spreadsheet, however you want to do it. Start to think about which rooms you would like to see on the ground floor or the base level. So your entrance into the building might be the reception, for example. What other rooms might you expect to see on that ground floor? And then what would you expect to see on the level above? So we'll call that the first floor, okay? So here in your levels, in your floor plan view that are here, we can go underneath them and we can expand what we see as the elevations, okay? And if we look from here, where we have these, the north, the south, the east, and the west, for example, so if I look from the south currently, we can see we have only two levels. So this is going to be our base level. So we'll walk in from street level, if you like. So here we can click on it once and it will select and it will highlight blue. And if you click again, you get the opportunity to change its name. So we can call that base level, or in the UK, we would call that 00. Pressing return, and it would say, would you like to rename any of the corresponding views? That would be these views in here. So if I say yes, then you'll notice what was called level 0 is now called base level 00. Okay. And then where we have level 1, if we click on that and select it, we can click again. And this time we can just type in level 01. And again, so you should understand this then. So would you like to rename the corresponding views? So in here, we'll say yes, and it will rename it to level 01. Okay. So if we look at this, where it sits just now, we've got the ground, then we have the first floor level. We'd maybe like a level above that. So we want maybe a second floor level and then a roof level. Okay. What you'll see is on the ribbon in the architecture tab, all the way over here, where you have the datum panel, we have a little tool that's called level. And if I click on that, my cursor just changed to a little crosshair. So if I'll press escape a minute to show you that my cursor is currently the modify tool, and it's looking for me to click and select something. But if I come back over to datum and I click level, then I can create and add new levels myself. So let's go roughly about here. And you'll notice a little green dashed extension line. If I click when I see that, and then I can move along to the right-hand side, and we'll see that little green dashed extension line again. I can click to drop the level. So we've got level 02. Revit's very clever in that, because the last one I called level 01, it will call it level 02. It doesn't know that the next one I actually need is going to be the roof. Okay, so it thinks it's going to be level 03. So if we go back and we click in this little area here where it's locked with the green extension dash, and I'll click one time. So we don't click and hold the mouse, it's just one click. And then we can come along to the right-hand side. And again, when we see that, we can click. And then escape twice. I'm going to press escape twice because the first time I press escape, it stops looking to just create a level, but the level tool remains active. So I'm going to press escape a second time, and then the modify tool appears. So we can say level 0, we've got base level, level 1, level 2, and this here, if I click on it one time and then click again, it should be called roof level. There we go. So we can create the levels for the concepts. You'll be told in the brief that you have a maximum number of levels. You'll also be told the maximum of your building height. So maybe we're allowed 4 meters. Let's try again for moving the next level. So if I click on that, instead of clicking to change the name, it's already blue. I can click to change its elevation height. So maybe we want 8,000. So we've got 4 meters, or do we want the ground level to be 4 meters, but every other level to be 3 maybe? Then we can make it 7 meters. And then with the roof, we'll say 10 meters, so 10,000. Okay, so we have the base level, we have the level 1, level 2, and we have a roof level. But what you'll notice is, hopefully, the base level is blue, level 1 is blue, but level 2 and roof are black and white. That's indicating that they don't yet exist as a floor plan view, so they don't exist in here yet. So we can't open the view, we can't actually go in and create anything with it. So to create that, I'm going to go up onto the ribbon, onto the View tab that's here, onto the Create panel, and then you'll see Plan Views. And it will click Plan Views. You can ask for a floor plan view. And then here, you'll see the two views. I'm going to hold in Control on my keyboard and select both, which allows me to say OK, and it will create two new views in here. There we go. So what it did though was it automatically opened the latest one, which is the roof level. You'll see that, that's in bold here. If I want to go back to the view I was in a second ago, we've got base level 00. We've got the south elevation. Double clicking opens these views. And then you can see the levels are all blue and white. So that's me running through it. What I wanted to ask was, is there anybody who's never used Revit before to create levels or edit levels in any way? The session is being recorded, and I think I've gone through that at a nice and slow pace. If anybody is trying to kind of work along with me and you have multiple monitors, hopefully that's a reasonable pace that you'll be able to follow along. If not, you'll get the recording of the session anyway, and then you can just pause and watch specific parts. So if you want to go back and watch how to create levels specifically, exactly step by step, that was how I did it. Okay. So once we have the levels, so if this is the concept, if we have a concept maximum height of 10 meters, we now know that the roof is going to go on here and our concept will be within the 10-meter height, whatever that might be. Okay. To begin creating the concept, so once you have maybe worked out some different areas that you want on the ground floor, something to consider, if we look back at this spreadsheet a little second. So if I were to think that how I've done it, I'm starting to think of maybe move some of these spaces to the ground floor instead of the upper floor. But the reception is in this group here. So I obviously want the reception on the ground floor. I might want to put some of the private offices on the ground floor as well. A plant room, I imagine, might go on the ground floor. It doesn't need to. You can come up with another reason why. But if I put the plant room on the ground floor and so on, once you start to see these totals add up, please remember you've also got circulation space. So if I had a limit of 500 square meters, I'm going to say my limit for this is 600. But that will only give me 100 square meters of circulation space, for example, the corridors, the hallways. So try not to get super close to the maximum for each level. How I've divided it up right now for all of these rooms, if I make all the rooms the exact size they should be, then I end up with 500 on one level, but I only end up with 240 on another level. Okay, and maybe 400 square meters on another level. Good. Thanks, Vanessa. So bearing in mind that you will also have circulation space, okay? Try and restrict that, try and limit that to as little as you can. But if we give this a little try, and here we can start to work out how this might work. So there are two ways to do this. I'll show you just using the areas, but personally I think using the architectural model is a nicer way to do it. I'll show you both, okay? So if we look at the the views, how we have them currently. If I want to work on the base level, so here we are here on base level 00. If you're in another view, like the elevation, anytime you double click, so we can expand views and we can double click on it and it will open it up. Okay. Soon we'll look at things like zoom. Once we have a model, we can look at zoom, pan. So we can zoom in and out, we can pan the model, and then we'll be able to rotate the model as well. So we need a model on the screen, first of all, to be able to do that, right? So in the floor plans in base level 00, we can double click that. And a floor plan view is looking straight down on the building, like a bird's eye view. So we have level 00 open. So anything we were to create currently, anything we create right now would be on the ground floor level, okay, the base level. If I've completed those rooms and I want to create something on another level, then I would double click that level and the view hardly seemed to change very much, but we're now looking at the level above the ground floor, okay? Or we can open up the roof, whatever that might be. So bearing in mind in your floor plan views, which view or which level that you're currently working on, okay? So there are a couple of ways to look at this and do this. And this is the way I prefer, and I'm going to show you a couple. You can decide which is better for you. We can start off with creating some walls. So if we said 500 square meters, for example, I'll do this in 2 steps. I'm going to do this first of all and then delete it and go back and show you again why I did that. But if I click the wall tool, so architecture, on the ribbon on the architecture tab, build, panel and wall, if I click that, it doesn't matter which walls you use. So with this standard template came all of these different types of walls. It doesn't matter because at this point it's just a concept. So we could even use something like one of the partition walls, for example. So if we were to use any of these or the external wall that has brick on the outside, the external wall that is purely only brick or block work, you can use any of these walls at this point. Okay. To make it nice and simple, I'm not going to use one of the walls that have lots of different elements in it, like brickwork and plasterboard and everything. The one I'm going to choose is just here, wall external. It's only brick. And I'm going to attempt this outside here, outside this view currently. What I would like to do is go and create something of a building that its footprint is going to be, what did we say, 600 square meters, right? So if we think of that 600 square meters, maybe that's going to be 10 meters by 60. So how I'll achieve that, and again, I'm going to do this just to show you, then I'll delete it and do a little step by step. I'm going to add some dimensions to that. And the dimensions that I want to add, instead of coming from the center of the wall, because it's the outside building footprint that we're being asked to assess, I want to choose the wall face. But again, I'll go back over this nice and slow. I'm just trying to show you what I'm trying to achieve, right? So if I pick these wall faces, we can see what the length of that building might be. And then if I choose these 2 faces, we can see what the depth of that building might be. Okay, so if I choose a wall and then edit this dimension to 60, 60, let's try that again. 60 meters, not 60 millimeters. Then we get the 60 meters, and if I click here, I can move this one and say 10 meters. So from the outside of that, if we have 60 meters times 10 meters, we know that this building then is 600 square meters. We cannot be bigger than that. So for this little example that's here, I would like to limit you to 600 square meters and be able to add in all of these rooms. and circulation. So this will be the experiment. This is a good trial. Vanessa mentioned downloading the software. I would download the software and then try and repeat this example as many times as you can. Come up with as many different concepts as you can. So this would be one way of achieving that, right? So we could think of 60 meters by 10 meters. Maybe we want to think of different proportions, so a little bit more square. Would 10 meters give me enough space to be able to put in enough rooms here? How do those rooms fit? And that's the next step. Okay, so those next steps would be, can we fit all of the rooms in without leaving lots and lots of space? So if I delete that and show you how I was achieving that, okay, so we go to architecture. And on the architecture tab in the build panel, here is wall. So we'll click wall. And then in the properties panel, we have in the type selector, so this is called the type selector, we have all of these different types of walls. Okay. You notice I'm trying to do this nice and simply. I'm just going to pick a really, really simple little wall that's not got lots and lots of components throughout it. So we'll just pick up wall. We are currently on the base level, so anything I draw will be on the ground floor level. We can attempt to draw within this space here, but you're going to notice it's going to be too long. Let's see how it goes. So roughly about here with the crosshair, I'm going to click one time. Okay, and then start to move. So we can start to move that and draw along. Once we think we're approximately at the right length, so we were thinking about 60, so we can zoom back. You notice we're only at 50. There we go, approximately 60, right? There's approximately 60 meters, 60,000. Even if you type it in and you get it exact, once you click and you start to draw, what you'll notice is it's going to measure to the middle of the wall. So that 60 meters is to the middle of the wall, okay? So approximately, think of it like a sketch. So each time I click, I can move to a new direction, and then we'll come here. And again, similarly to what you saw when we created the levels, a little green dashed extension appears. So I can click one time there, and then to finish, I'm going to go back to where I started and then click one time. Okay. And again, remember with Revit, you have to press escape twice. Once because it's maybe trying to draw a wall, but you'll see currently the cursor, I've pressed escape once, the cursor stays a little crosshair and I'll press escape twice, a second time. Okay, so we have something roughly what I would like it to look like, okay? But this little elevation marker is inside the building, hence why I draw this outside here normally. But what you can do is, as long as you have the modify tool, the little arrow that's there, you can drag over the top of that. And then if you put your mouse on it, it automatically defaults to move, and you can drag it to the outside of the building where it really should be. Okay, so what about size? How do we check that things are the correct size? So again, nice and slow so you can follow if it's being recorded or you're watching the recording. On the ribbon, this time on the Annotate tab and the Dimension panel, always use aligned dimension for this. So if we click aligned, by default, up here will be set to wall center line. So if you measure your building from the center to the center, and then you changed it to 60, as you see, when we drew it, it was 60 meters. The building is actually bigger than that. Okay, so the building is bigger than that slightly. So when we go to annotate dimension and we choose aligned, you might want to use this in here is choose the wall face. And what the wall face allows you to do is dimension from this external face of the building all the way to this external face of the building. So I've clicked those two locations Now what Revit is asking me is, where do you want to drop the dimension? So a third click is needed to drop the dimension. Okay? And if I repeat that, you'll notice the dimension tool is still on. It's got a little dimension symbol beside the cursor, and wall faces are still active. So we can choose the exterior two faces, and for the third click, we can drop the dimension. And when you're done, 2 escapes again. So the number one thing that I find students do who are new to Revit is they try and change this value by clicking on the value, okay? That might happen to you, and if you see this pop up, what you don't do is you don't replace it and change it. What you want to do in Revit, if I zoom out, and we'll change to something like, oh, we went the wrong way. We'll change it to something like 1. There we go. So you can see the dimensions quite clearly on the screen at this point. Aesthetically, this looks terrible, but just so you can see the dimensions. To make this say 60 meters, you need to move this wall or this wall. Okay? If this dimension is black, it's telling you what the dimension is. It's not editable. But if I select this wall, the dimension turns blue. Okay? So we can see that dimension is there. If I click this wall, Revit has been a little bit of an issue. It's showing me a temporary dimension also. So let me just delete this and show you what it's doing. So if I click a wall, Revit automatically shows you a little temporary dimension. And you can tell it's temporary with this little symbol that's here. If I bring mine back, it doesn't have that symbol. Okay, so it's a permanent or fixed dimension. Be very careful with temporary dimensions, because you'll notice the temporary dimension is coming from the inside face. Okay, so if you make that say 60 meters, then the building, if I make this one say 60 meters, the building itself is actually 60 meters, 430 long. Okay, so be very careful and make sure you zoom in and you click the correct dimension. And we'll say 60 meters, so 60,000 millimeters. And then I want to make this one change as well. Okay, so 10 meters, 715. I want it to say 10 meters. This is the wall that I need to move, or this wall. Okay. Those coming from AutoCAD might assume that this is the wall you click, because this is the length in AutoCAD. It would be the length of this wall. Remember what we did in the dimensions? We made it the dimension from the outside of one face to the other. So what we're doing is actually moving the outside of this face to 10 meters. So if I say 10 meters, now I'll change this back. Let's change the scale. So it's the view scale, so that the dimensions and everything look a little bit better. But it's now 60 meters by 10 meters, for example. Okay, so that would be one. That's a good example of it. Within this space now, you can start to populate your rooms as you have them. Okay, 60 meters by 10 meters might work. You can use a calculator and you can check what else might give me. So if we said 50 meters, what depth might that allow me to have? And so on. Another way to try that, if we bring them back in, let's see, I'm just going to delete them. I'm going to attempt that little sketch that I had made like this. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to make something like that. And then we'll see, as we kind of start to develop these spaces, whether they fit as we go. Okay, so here's how I would tackle that. So we've already got our elevation set up, and we now know how to draw in some walls and how to add some dimensions. So we might start. So architecture, we'll look to the build panel and we'll say wall. And then let's, instead of saying exactly that footprint, I've already worked out what my spaces might be in this spreadsheet here. Okay, so I think I need a reception that's 7 meters by 7 meters. I need 5 breakout rooms. They are 5 meters by 6 meters approximately, and so on and so on. Okay, so I'm going to try and recreate them as that little sketch that I've created. And then one of your challenges as you practice might be to make a better space than me. How's that? See if we can make a better space than what I make here right today. So we've got these little breakout spaces. So we start with these. We'll say, I had in my head, as this space worked, I had something like this. Okay, so I had, when I was thinking of this and I sketched it out, I was thinking of maybe some meeting rooms along here. So a reception in this area, a corridor hallway, as you saw. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. I think we had 5 meeting rooms that we need. So if I thought of putting them all together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are those meeting rooms. We're going to have something like a staircase at this end. Possibly, if it fits, we want a boardroom here. And then there were some open plan or collaboration spaces that were here. So you'll notice I'm sketching, right? I'm not too concerned about the size at this point. Maybe our reception area, the reception area might end up coming into the circulation space if it needs to. And then at the end of this building, I was thinking, I think a print room, there was a server space, and then another office. Okay, and we had another staircase along here somewhere. We need a storeroom. So it's going to be like a storeroom here. And then there were 2 more offices. Now, if it fit perfectly like that, that would be ideal, but I know it won't. We have 2 things to work out. One is going to be the perimeter, the area of the building, the overall area of the building, but we also want to work out the area of each of the spaces. So if we get that correct on the left and we work along, what you'll remember was from my sketch is this looked, it kind of stepped in a little bit around the building here. So we might need to change some of that, how it fits around about this area here. Okay, and the way we check that is we'll end up creating something of an area plan. This is my idea of how it will work. Okay, I'm thinking already of daylight coming in from all of the spaces. What I haven't created is like maybe like a room here, because you won't get any daylight into this space, right? So I'm already thinking of big windows, lots of daylight. Maybe on the south, if you're on a warm country, maybe you don't want huge big windows. Being in Scotland, I would quite like large windows here on the south, lots of light coming in. Something else maybe that's not great design would be a corridor that goes to nowhere. This costs a lot of money to build. We have a corridor that's here, and then maybe it's an escape entrance. This would work. But what if we have a staircase? Okay, and we have a door here maybe going in and a door coming in here and so on. So these might work, okay, as spaces for me. But what do they look like for size? We can look at one other view that's here. So we have the 3D views. If I double click that, this is what it looks like in 3D. Okay, so using the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out, you can pan, and you can hold in the wheel. And if you hold in Shift also on your keyboard, you can rotate and see what that looks like as a building, right? We can go back to the level, and we can go to the elevations. Let's go to maybe south. There we go. And we can see that the building currently is too high. All right, so we'll deal with that. It's way too high. It should only go up to the level 1 that's here. Okay, so back to that 3D. What we want to do is pick up all of the walls that we have created so far. So we can pick up 1. And then if I right click on that, I can select all instances either in the view, everything I can see, or the project. And you'll notice it picks up all of the walls that are here. Okay. This is where the properties help. So we have a location, which is the base constraint, which is on level 00, where we thought it should be. And the top is unconstrained and 8 meters high. So what we want to say is the top of these walls should go to the level above that we're currently working on. So level 1. And then say apply. And now this is the ground floor. Okay, or it might be the ground floor. We'll see if it fits. So going back to our base level, we can see how that might look. I would be really happy with that, but what we haven't done is check the area of that. Something to pay attention to in your views is there is a type of view missing until you tell Revit that you want to do it. So here, this is going to be called an area plan. So we can look at the ribbon, the architecture tab, room and area. And then here, this little drop down for area, we can tell it we want to create an area plan. And then it asks which views might you want an area plan for. You can select all of the views and we'll say OK. Do you automatically want to create area boundaries? I'm going to say no to this, and I recommend you all do as well. So the reason that you might want to say yes is it will automatically do it now and it's quite quick. But actually, if you said no, you get to create where you want them to be. Okay, so we'll say no to that. Do you automatically want to create any area boundary lines associated with the walls? We can also say no. And it's going all of the different areas, all of the different levels. Okay. I've now got a new section. So where before we were working in the floor plans, we can see that here. I've now got a new section called area plans. And if we open up the base level, we should see our building that we already created. So anything that I do to this building here, if I edit the walls, will also happen in this view and will also happen in this view. So if I deleted this wall, it will delete from all of the views. Okay. But something really special the area plans show that the other views don't are the areas of your building. So let's create them. Let's start with them. Okay. So we've already created the area plan. To create an area, we need to define what a boundary might be. So if I click area boundary, there are two ways to do this. You can automatically click on a wall and it will select the middle of the wall. Okay, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. You'll see that the area boundary sits in the middle of the wall. If I undo that, another way to do it is by using the sketch and draw tools that are here. So you can create it using something like the rectangle tool. And if we zoom in, we can click exactly the right space in there. I'll just change this little setting up here, which is the thin line setting, so that you can see that on the screen. Okay, so that defines the area of that room. So I can now add in, if I go and click here, area, and I choose area, then I can add an area to that space. You notice I can't add an area to any other space, right? Depending on if you're working in square meters or square foot, depending on where you are in the world, you can select that tag and then you can edit so that it shows only metric or only imperial, whatever way you want to work. One of the time-consuming parts is going to be adding all of these areas in and then moving all of the walls so that your area is within the size required. So for my meeting rooms, I actually have a limit of 30 meters. Okay, so we could select the wall and we can start to move the arrows And you'll notice because I drew it, it doesn't change the area. Do you see that? It's not attached. You see? If we do it the other way and we choose area boundary and we do pick these, okay, and then I use area and I put the area in here and I start to move them. Do you see if I move the wall, then the area also updates, right? If I move it this way, it also updates. Okay, so you have a choice of how are you going to attempt to create your spaces. We can look at moving with just click on the boundary. So if I click that boundary, I can move it until it gets to 30 meters or just under the 30 meters, right? And then we can start to bring the walls across to where they meet. To align different tools, we'll notice on the ribbon, if I select something, it changes to the Modify tab. And then here is the Align button. I'll click Align, and I'll click maybe this area, boundary, and then the face of the wall. And the wall will move. So the first thing you click is going to actually stay where it should be. Okay? So you can see how that works. I might delete that, and we'll try that again. So just to show you, why might I like to use the draw it yourself method, right? So when we go to area boundary, and I've got it set on the pick lines tool, so we can pick all of these lines as we go along. And we'll pick this one, we'll do along here. Okay, so we've still got these ones to do on the outside here. I might like to draw these ones in myself because what I don't want is I don't want to draw in the middle of the wall. I would like to draw on the outside of the wall because the outside is actually my building footprint. Okay, so using that rectangle tool, little sketch that's there, I know that I've drawn on the outside of that. Okay, so we can then start to look this time at the area. So if I position area and we hover here and we click to position it, we get an area tag. Again, I would change it so that it's only metric or only imperial. It just looks much, much neater. Okay. And then start to think about the others. So for here, if I click the same as the level, if I click on it once and then I click on its name, we can call it meeting, right? So this is going to be one of the meeting rooms, for example. And then we'll click area, and I'll choose area, and we can start to position them all in here. So let's pick that metric area. So we can position each of these this way. You'll notice everything is going yellow. What you should not have in any of your building is any empty space like that. Okay, so we need an area and we need to name it and tell it what it might be. So if I was to name each of these spaces, it's a meeting room, it's a meeting room. You can call it meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, meeting 4, meeting 5 if you really want, or you can put in the room numbers. These others for me was going to be something like a print room, a server, and then I had a couple of offices that I needed. This was the staircase. We've got circulation. It's here. This was the other office. So there were 3 offices and then 5 meeting rooms in this spreadsheet as I had it. Store from my sketch. This would be the reception. We had a collaboration or an open space. An open space. Let's see. And then along here, I had a boardroom. and then the other stair. So I have a fair bit of work to do then. I've now got to change it so that each of the spaces was the correct size. Okay, so there are ways to do that. Now we've got 33 meters, 37 meters. Conceptually, I would suggest if you're able to pick up the wall and you move the wall and you get it really close to 30 meters, it's not going to be penalised if it is ever so slightly just over that. We have a tolerance allowance for that. But then the next room now is 40 meters, so now I need to use the arrow keys to move that. Or the other thing you get to see is whenever you click on a wall, that's when these temporary dimensions might help. Okay, so if I click this wall here, it comes up that it's 7 meters. Maybe I want it to be 6 meters. And if I change that, then it changes the size. Okay. The area is measuring from the middle of the wall to the middle of the wall. So this is much easier to do it this way, because if you move the wall, then it changes the default, the border automatically, as we see. Okay. The other way I was showing you to do it, I'm just going to delete a couple of these boundaries a little minute. The other way I was showing you to do it, if you do the area boundary and you draw the space exactly in the room yourself, you get the area exactly the size of that room. So if we pick this up, I'm going to delete that little boundary it didn't like, and I'm just going to start to create them myself. So area boundary, I'll choose the rectangle tool and I'll draw that in exactly myself. Okay. If you want to do it that way, I recommend that you add dimensions. So exactly as we did before. So you can say on the ribbon in the Annotate tab and the Dimension panel, aligned, and make sure we've got wall faces. But what you want to dimension is the inside of the room. So if you know that you want a room 7 meters, we'll click this wall and we'll make this 7 meters. Or if you know it's going to be 6 meters, let's say 6 meters, but this way should be 7. You see? So if I click this wall and I change this to 7 meters, then that wall changes. You should notice that the boundaries don't move, and that's why I was saying to you there's 2 ways to do it. You can either assign the boundary to the wall, or you can manually add it and draw it in yourself. Okay? There's multiple ways to do it. No way is the right way to do it. No way is the wrong way to do it. Just people will prefer different ways. That's it. So you pick the way you prefer. I'll go back through then and we'll just say add an area boundary into this space and then this space. And we need to fix the ones that are there. So you can see how that would take a bit more time. Okay, so I don't need this one, for example, that's here. We can bring that along to here just now, and I would fix all of these spaces that are now going to be broken. We'd need to go along and fix each of them as well. Okay, so that's how you work out your concepts. So once you have each of the rooms, the size you need them to be. So if we're looking for 30 meters, I'll just very roughly do this. This might be an early trial at a concept. So 30, 30. Let's bring these along to where they might sit. So no spaces can be bigger than the 30 meters. We'll allow a tiny little tolerance, but if this is just a trial and an early concept design trial for me, I'm going to pick up each of the walls and just move them so that the spaces are even approximately the right size at this point. Once you have all of the spaces the right size, we've got quite a big bit of space over here as well, this huge big meeting space. But once you have all of the spaces the right size, what you'll start to find is down here, it won't work perfectly, right? It won't work perfectly. So what we can do is we're going to draw in some new walls down here. So exactly as we did before, we would just draw in some walls. This wall here then, and these walls, they're way too long. Okay, so if you select any of the walls that you want to change, you'll see a little blue dot up here. And we can bring it back to here. If you're getting any errors, it's because this wall and this wall around here were joined. We just need to say OK or accept whatever it actually gives us. So we can just say unjoin. So you'll notice why I'm having to change the shape was because these were too big, these spaces. So if I make a boundary, let's bring it back to show you. So the store is not enclosed, the office is not enclosed. Do you see here, it's just like, it's just leaking, right? It's just coming out. The area is just leaking through this wall because it doesn't know that that wall is a boundary yet. So if we change that and we pick this wall, it now knows that this is a boundary for this area here. So again, checking your spreadsheet, looking at what sizes everything needs to be. If these are the correct size, great. If it's too big, then you'll need to reduce the size. However, we need to do that. Okay. Same, I'm going to pick up, need to hit escape. I'm putting too many boundaries on. There we go. So we'll pick up this wall and the little blue dot. We'll move that one back. This wall, the little blue dot, and move that one back. I'll show you why. If we go to 3D, so we'll look at 3D in here. Currently, as the building stands, we've drawn too tall, but we've kind of got these fins to the side of the building that we're not needing. These are not outside rooms, so we need to fix that. And all we're going to do is drag these back. So a nice, early, very rough concept, okay? Once you have those very early rough concepts, you can start to look at the dimensions of the building overall. We've got these to fix as well. Yep, there we go. And we can do the same with the boundary as well. So you'll notice if you select it, you can just move it back. We've got a little spare extra one in there I can delete. Region not enclosed, so we still have some boundary that we need along here. So if we do each individual room, or we just drag these along, however it might work. Here. There we go. This one is not enclosed, so there's a little gap somewhere. What we can do is we can fix that, go in and create the area boundary in the space itself. So let's see where the gap is. So this one seems fine. So it must be here. Not enclosed, that one's the wrong one. There we go. So let me just add that. Oh, it's not picked up that space. So what we might end up doing is with this space in here, we can look to, let's go and find, so we've got the boardroom, we've got the collaboration, so it must be along the top somewhere, there'll be a little gap or something. So we can delete that and then just re-add that in. So area boundary, pick up the spaces. Oh, it hasn't done it. Let's do it manually then. Because I dragged this one along, I think, just trying to cut some time. So we'll do architecture, area boundary, and it's just a little sketch of the room. So we just draw in and delete this one first. What we can't have is any of these boundary lines just sitting in exactly the same place. There we go. There's that reception as well. So what I can't do, we can pick the inside of the wall here, but what you can't do, or what you shouldn't do, is put two on top of each other that run parallel to each other. So we can do that. There we go. And then the same thing then for the storeroom and some of the other rooms that are there as well. So just pick the inside corner and the inside corner, and then do that for each of the spaces that say they're not enclosed. Okay. So there's two ways to do it, whichever way suits you better. You either draw in each of the rectangles yourself, or you automatically select them using the Pick Lines tool. Once you have that, once you've got that done, I'm going to hit escape a couple of times. And obviously we have the modify tool. If I select something and I hold in control, then I can select multiples of that. Okay, so if we go around about and we pick multiple of these lines, if we like, the boundary lines, we can then use copy, and we can copy all of that up to here. So depending on how you did it, these might already match each other, and if they don't, you can just extend them. So let's bring these across to here. They can overlap each other fine. Overlapping is not a problem. They don't need to sit absolutely perfectly. There we go. And then if they all overlap enough, or as long as we have that as a space, that should allow us to add and check the area of the footprint of the building. Like so. So if I'm allowed 600, I've blown it, right? We've got way too much area used in there. And this was why I started to look at what happens if I change the space here. What happens if I draw the reception into this circulation space that's here? Because this circulation space, although it says it's not enclosed, let's actually see how big it is at this point. And let's go with that. We'll get a little error telling me we've got lots of overlap. Yeah, we've got 110 square meters of just circulation space. So if I bring the reception up and into here, that might actually help reduce that. So that's why I was saying don't get too bogged down with making everything exactly perfect right now. Just work away and make things a little bit more conceptual at this point. Okay, once we bring the reception in, if we find out then that I'll just change a little bit of that space. So if we said the reception came into here and along, we'll bring this up. It changed to 638. Maybe there's something else we can do. Those are the maximum room sizes that we're allowed. What if we moved some of them to the upstairs? So if we moved a couple of the meeting rooms to the upstairs, then it would maybe look something like this, right? So we can bring that along, bring this down. So now we've got, 595 square meters. So that's within the building footprint. Okay. What you have to be very aware of is if that's the building footprint downstairs, what you can't then do is overhang. If you're using all of the space, you can't then upstairs make a building that sits like this, right? Because then you've got some new space. At the end of your design, look down on top of the outside of the building. When you look down as if you were a bird, all of the building outline that you can see, you're going to draw around it all and check that it's not bigger than 600 square meters. Okay. So if you were happy with that, and you have this as a concept, that's as far as we need to go here. However, if you wanted to and you're in Teams, somebody now works on it in Forma. I just wanted to show you just quickly in this. We'll have a break after I show you this part, and then we'll look at Forma. Okay? But on the architecture tab, you have on the build panel, doors and windows. So if you want to go further, bearing in mind that some aesthetics are judged. So if you create a floor plan showing doors and how everything flows, for example. So if we have these doors coming into the meeting rooms, the stairs, however that might go, the boardroom and so on, what you're actually showing is a little bit of thought and showing that the spaces do work. Okay, so yes, there is enough space to put a door into the boardroom here. Is there enough space here? No. So you see? So while we think we've got everything absolutely perfect and sorted, we haven't left enough space for a door to actually get into this meeting room. If we remove that meeting room, then that's not a problem. But make sure that you have enough space to get doors into every room, however that might be. Okay, so maybe even if it is a door into the print room and then a door from the print room into the server, however that might work. Okay, so to add doors, we've got the architecture tab, we have the door button here, we've got door, and then in the type selector, you have preloaded some different types of doors. Okay, so if we choose them, yep, we'll pick this one, and we think maybe that's what's going to go here. Hovering over the space, as long as you're roughly in the middle of the space, then Revit will find exactly the middle of the space. If you press click your left mouse button, it will drop that in for you. If we choose a different type of door, so a single swing door, there we go. If I press the space bar on my keyboard, it flips which way that might open. So please give some thought. When you go into an office, does the door open this way? Or does the door open this way? Okay, so typically a door might open this way. So as the door starts to open, you can see into the space versus this. When the door starts to open, all you can see is this wall here, right? If this was a bathroom, then this might be a good way to open the door. So this would be like a private swing door, right? Versus a public swing door. So with a bathroom, we don't want to see into the entire space. But if it's an office space, then yeah, we do. So we can think about how the door swing might work for each of the spaces, if it's a public or a private space or however that might be. Should that door be located here? Should that door be located here, closer to the wall? And how does that affect the flow of the space, etc.? So this is something that we're saying is not absolutely required. But if you want to spend time on it, if you have a team and somebody's really strong in Revit and you want to go and work on that, you're more than welcome to. It might get you some bonus points in terms of the aesthetics or the architectural judgment that's there. There's also the window tool, okay, and the preloaded windows that are there. And then think of each of the spaces. So does the server room require a window? Does the print room require a window? Does the office require a window? Does it need multiple? Are they going to be on the north? Are they going to be on the east? What happens with the light on the east? What happens with the light on the north? Okay. Should there be windows into the stairwell? And then at what height would they be, for example? So we can look at some of that. Do we want a window on the east for this office and lots on the south? Or is this going to be in a really warm climate? Do we even know the orientation yet of the building? Is it going to sit east to west? Or might it end up sitting on the site north to south? So we don't know. I don't know. You can tell me. Okay. And then where each of the doors and windows go and so on can fit within there. Should you want to change any of the window sizes, so for example, this one, if I click on this window, same thing with doors. Up here in the type selector, if these are all the types that are available and you would like let's say a 3 meters long window by 1210, 1810 is the largest, you could click edit type. So these properties here are for that window. Okay, and there's that window multiple times. If I click edit type up here, anything I change in here is going to change all of the windows that are the same name as this one. Okay, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to click duplicate. And I would like to call this, instead of 1810, let's call it 3000 by 1210. So I want to make it 3000 long. And we'll say OK to that. So instead of the 1810 width, let's change it to 3000. And if I say OK, I get a little error. It's telling me that the window is clashing in here. But all I need to do is move that up. So we now have a new window that when I click window, I have a new window here, which is 3 meters long. If I would like to use that in any other rooms, we can add that 3 meter long window. Okay, so the process for me would be roughly, very roughly, get the spaces into the correct sequence and order. And then we can think about those perimeter areas and how that might work or not. And if it's going to work, then you can start to look at the sizes of the windows, the sizes of the doors, or the size of the rooms, and make sure everything is absolutely perfect. Okay, so I'm going to say we'll have a little 10-minute break, and then we'll look at the next level up. So if we do this again, but for the level up, so we'll look at if I go into 3D, we have a couple of things to fix, I suppose, in here that we fixed earlier, if you remember how we did it. We just make it go to level 1. But the ground floor level looks like this. Okay, I want to see the upstairs next and how we do the upstairs. So if everybody's quite happy with that, we'll take a little break. I'll stop the share. There we go. So welcome back. So we've kind of covered then how that might work on the ground floor level. Just actually looking at that, because of the type of wall system that I've used, which is a brick, a solid brick system, if you like. What we might want to do is look at a couple of different ways on how to change that aesthetically. What might it look like? So in Revit, I always press escape a couple of times, just to make sure that no tools are currently active. And if you click on one of the walls, you'll see what the wall is that you've selected. You can always right-click and choose Select All Instances. So we've already looked at this, but if we use this in entire project, you can pick up all of the different walls that are there, okay? And then in the type selector, if you choose a different type, so this is an internal wall, but it's going to look better on the screen, right? A little bit more aesthetic, yeah? A little white box, if you like. Another way to do that is instead of picking up one and then right-clicking and choosing Select All, what you can sometimes do is putting your mouse up in this area here. If I hold in my left mouse button, do you see it's creating a little selection window? And if you go left to right or right to left, the window is different. So if we go right to left, anything that touches this window or anything that's inside it will be selected. If we go left to right, it's only anything that's fully within inside the window, not if it touches it. So you'll notice it has a continuous boundary line versus going right to left, it has a dashed boundary line. But either way, if I select everything in the screen, I've got multiple things selected. What I want to do is up on the top of the screen is use filter. And I only want the walls. So what I'll do is I'll deselect the doors, the levels, the windows. Only the walls are selected. We can say OK. And then, because we've only got the walls selected, we can change to a different type. And then either click in the screen or hit escape to deselect everything. And we have, it looks a little bit nicer, right? Maybe. Depends what your preference is. So if you prefer the brick walls and what they look like, then you're welcome to keep either. Aesthetics are personal preference, let's say. So let's try and recreate the whole thing on the upstairs level. All right. So what we want to do then is if we look at your floor plan for the base level, we can see all of the walls. If you've added windows and doors, etc., you'll also have them. If I scroll down and we look at the base area plan, then we can see what we've got in here, all of the different areas and what sizes they are. So this is how you're going to prove through screenshots of this, what area each of your spaces are. And you can also screenshot this to show what area your building footprint is, something like that. Okay. If we want to work up a level, then we need to look at that here as the floor plan for the base level, and we'll use the same type of wall. But if we look at level 01, what you can see currently by going to level 01, so we're on the next level up, that first floor level, you can see the building down below. Now, a lot of times, depending on the installation, you might not see that. So to show you how to switch that on and off, personally, I quite like that to be on up to a point, and then I'll switch that off. So in the view properties, which are here, so as long as you have nothing selected, so escape twice to prove that, to ensure that happens, when you scroll down, you'll see a section in the view properties called underlay. So think of it like a piece of tracing paper, right? A piece of film. The range base level is level 00. That's what you can see. You can see the ground floor level. If you set that to none, then it all disappears. Only visually. So in the floor plan 00, you can still see that building. It also does exist in 3D. And if you go to 00, you can see it in floor plan. But now if you go to level 1, you cannot see it. Okay? The reason I like to see it is I'm going to need it for the perimeter of the building. Okay? I don't want to make this floor bigger than the floor below because the floor below is already at its maximum size I'm going to be allowed. Okay? So here, if you can't see it, you scroll down to underlay, range, base, level, and you click the level below. So if I'm on 1, then I want to pick the base level, level 00. And then either click apply or move your mouse into the drawing window. Okay, moving your mouse into the drawing window applies whatever set that you've made in the properties anyway. And then a couple of things we can do. We can now, on this level, we're on level 1. I would like to start drawing the upper floor walls. I won't spend as long on this floor level. I just want to show you how to begin. You know, following the video, how to draw in walls and areas and so on. It's exactly the same. So I won't spend just as long trying to organize everything, but I'll show you how it might work. So we'll go with the wall tool, and then I'm going to keep the same wall type, let's say, but something I didn't set the last time was the height. So you can either set the height now, or if I set it, well, let's say I don't set it now. Let's say we'll just go in and start to draw. And I'm just going to draw over the top of this just now, just to show you. So if we draw that in just roughly, and I go to 3D, it's going to be way too high again. Okay, and we can fix that here. If you remember, we came here and we can fix that and say, I'm on level 1. The top of this wall should go to level 2. Okay, like this. But if you can fix it while in the view, so we'll go to view floor plan level of level 1. We can see the ground floor plan level. I'm going to click wall and zoom in, and I'm going to go to the middle of this wall, click, and then start to draw. So if we know that this was okay for size, then I can just trace around the outside of the existing ground floor level. Let me zoom in a bit. So sometimes you need to zoom in quite close. And then we'll pick that up. And then back to the beginning. Okay. So I didn't fix the height. So if we go now to look at that in 3D, we will see, yep, we have the perimeter all drawn in, but it is way too high. We can see that it's way too high. Okay. So to fix that can sometimes be quite a bit of work. If I use Control, I have to go and select all of them and then fix that in here like I showed you before. We'll say go up to level 2, to fix this. Okay? So if the ground floor level is exactly the size it needs to be, we can't make this bigger. So what we can't really do, if I go to the correct level, what we can't then do is overhang this like so. Okay? So we can't have any overhangs or cantilevers because the ground floor level might already be exactly the right size. To fix that, if I go back again, I'm going to do it using best practice this time. I'm going to click wall, but this time, either in here, where you've been doing it before, or up here, the top of the wall, I want to pick the next level up. Okay, so we're on level 1, that's the base of the wall. The top of the wall should go to level 2. And then I don't need to fix it. So if we come in here and we click to start, I'll just pan along and we can click that midpoint and then the same around here. Again, this is going to be our early concept for the upstairs. This isn't going to say that by drawing this shape, we're going to be able to keep it exactly this size or shape. It might end up being smaller, but what it can't be is larger, right? So if we come into here, and then I have one more to draw, which goes back to here. And when I click here, it closes up the little gap. And I've now got all of the upstairs exterior walls drawn. So it would look something like this. Okay, if it was exactly the same upstairs as the downstairs level. It can't always be. Now I've drawn that, I might not want to see any of the other walls. Staircases, yeah, possibly we want to keep the staircases. So if we come in and we choose the wall tool, maybe I want to draw in and actually just draw in where the staircase is going to be, because obviously the staircase is going to go through multiple levels, but every other room can change. So if we come to here, yeah, so I have the staircase and the staircase, but everything else can change, okay? What I don't then want to see is the downstairs internal walls, because they have no relation to this space. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to go to that underlay, range base level, and make it say none. And when I move my mouse, I can only see all of the walls where I think they might need to be for this level. So we're at the upstairs level right now. We've got a staircase. We have a staircase. It comes, obviously, it needs to stay in that area. And then we have some other spaces we need to fit in. Okay, so going back through the same process, we could go to the level 1 in the area plans, and we can start to create area boundaries or walls. We might put some WC, some toilets around about these spaces. I was thinking in my head, if I bring this spreadsheet back in, at this space, I'm thinking just a 400 square meters open plan office. I thought 20 meters by 20 meters, but I can't do that because the building is not 20 meters deep. So I'm going to now try and fit in something like a 400 square meter space here. What might end up happening is that this space here, there we go, it might end up sitting closer like this, right? We might not need just as much space upstairs as we've used downstairs. And what you can have is you can have spaces like this. So the downstairs takes up more footprint than the upstairs. If the downstairs is taking up that 500 or 600 or whatever your limit is, the upstairs can be smaller. It can't be bigger. It can't overhang. So we couldn't have it the other way, right? The upstairs was overhanging like this. When we look down from above, the absolute outside of all of your building should be no bigger than whatever the limit is going to be in the brief. And then in this space, we can try and fit in. So using the walls, we could say maybe, is this going to be here, some WC, whatever it might be, open seating, whatever spaces, maybe a meeting room, whatever that might be, and then a big meeting space. If I needed to, what about something like this, right? So that little blue dot, we can bring this back. Oh, I've deleted one. I didn't mean to delete that wall. I meant to bring that back. So we obviously need the stairs. So I need the stairs to stay, but maybe once I add in the space, the area, we can look at that. So we'll say area boundary. We'll pick these. So I'm doing it a nice quick way. And then we can start to add in those areas. So if I pick area, oh, 400 is the maximum it's allowed to be. That's a pretty big space. Once I add in then some WC in here. So I think on the spreadsheet it said we had to have some WC spaces, I think 3 per floor, for example. So if I can work that in here or over here, I'm within the size. Okay, so I again would try and get that as close as I can to 400 square meters as I'm allowed. So maybe this wall that's here, instead of being aligned to the stairs, maybe it comes down and along here. So I'm just trying to think what I wouldn't do. Let's see. What I wouldn't do is I might not create a wall here because this little space in here would be no use. But what if we bring some of these through? I'm just trying to zoom in so I can pick up the wall. Yep, like this. Okay, so if I try that, we'll pick up this wall and we'll just extend it a little bit. This wall here I'm going to bring back to here. And then this wall, I don't necessarily need this wall to be all the way across. It can be the stair at the other side only. There we go. And then I need to redo let's see, we've got the stair. Yep, we've got this. I don't need any of these walls down here. Don't need any of these. Oh, we did need that one, but then we don't need that. We can pick the area boundary. There we go. So currently it's 421. Once I create, if we're doing it as little WC spaces in here, for example, yeah, it's going to end up about 400 square meters. So you see how I changed that space? So it's not coming all the way out to here, if we look at it in 3D. It's not coming all the way out to here. It's not coming all the way out to here, so it's stepped back. Okay, but it's about 400 square meters. So as big as I can make it, trying to get that space as close as I can. Okay. And then finally, what we would end up looking at would be what were we going to put on the top floor, right? So the top floor ends up maybe only 242 square meters. It's got some rooms, but it's not got a lot of them. So maybe on the top floor, we end up creating something only half this size. Okay, so how that might work then, if we try something like that again. So we can look at level 2 this time. And then what I did was, it's gone back over the same steps, which is good. We can look at in the view, making sure escape twice. I hadn't hit escape twice. As we scroll down, we'll see the range base level underlay. So we're on level 2. So I want to see level 1. And there we go. So there's what level 1 might look like. Okay, and then think I'm only maybe wanting half of this space up here. So we can click wall and then check that the height is going to the next level. So we're on level 2, and the next level is called roof. And then we can start to draw in. So let's just guess that we only want about half of it this time. And you'll notice I've been using Revit for a long time, and I still have to zoom in and out. So it works pretty well if you zoom in and zoom out when you need to. So make sure if you're trying to click somewhere, you want to zoom in as close as you can. So let's say this is what it's going to look like on the top floor. Okay. Might a different concept work differently? Yes. Had I not made so many spaces on the ground floor, maybe it would be a lot squarer or cube-like. Then that would also work. This is the whole point of doing multiple concepts. Okay. So we have that, and maybe we also want to add in then the stairs. I can already see an issue. The architects that judge are not going to like this space in here. So maybe this wall here actually needs to be back here. So what we can do is we can use the align tool, and we can align to this face. Remember, the second one you click is the one that's going to move. So the upstairs space becomes something like this. Do we need 2 staircases? Is it only 1 staircase? Think if you want to go like this, why? If you need 2, then maybe this one here must be in the middle of the building, for example. Okay, so maybe the staircase out there doesn't work. Maybe in your concepts you want to investigate having a staircase here that goes all the way through the building and not here, for example. Okay, and then it's the same. So now we have that. We don't then need, if we scroll, I'm scrolling too far down. We don't then need to see the next level below, and we need to work on the area plan for that. So we'd be level 2. And then area boundary. So again, it's exactly the same thing. Once you figure it out on one of the levels, you can repeat that for each of the levels. We've got all of the boundaries, and then you can start to add in whatever the areas might be. Okay, so whatever the areas might be for multiple offices, etc. for here, you'll have that from the brief, and you should now at this point then over all levels have all of the rooms, whatever they're called. So go back through and name the spaces, stair, if this is a collaboration space or a meeting room or whatever it might be, name all of the spaces. Okay, you can then screenshot these and present them however you want to. At this point, for me, I wouldn't be. This is my concept. Save all of your concepts. So file, save as, and we'll save this as a project. And this might then just be concept 1. Okay, whatever it might be, concept 1. If you make iterative changes, concept 1, 1, concept 1, 2, concept 1, 3, so it's still concept 1. Okay, you might make little tweaks, you might make totally different changes. So concept 2. So concept 2 now is the staircase sits in a totally different place, for example. Okay, and then just finally in this, in terms of your presentation for this, we can look at the annotate tab, and we can look at the color fill legend. And if you add a color fill legend by just clicking here, it's going to ask you what type of legend you want. Okay, so currently it's going to do everything by color as gross building area. You see everything is all the one color, right? You can actually see how it fits in here and so on. Total area right now, if we to count it, is going to give me both. So if we to schedule total area, it's going to say on the ground, we've got 595 plus another 595. So do be careful with that. But you can also change this. So if we select it, you see what happens up here? So if we select this, we can edit it. Okay, so we have all up in here. Instead of area type, let's change it by area name. Now, default is fine. Let's just say OK to that. We don't need to check it for color blindness or anything. We'll accept it as default. You can say OK to that, and you will get all of the names defining the color of the space. So stairs are the same color, meeting, This is why I called it a meeting room and not meeting 1, meeting 2, and so on. And you can start to see what all of the colors or all of the defined spaces might be like. It's a little bit over the top because you can already see the names, but for presentation purposes, you might want to not see all of the names here along with the areas. You might want to show that in one, you might want to show it in another without that, and you can try, if you see what I'm doing here, is you can start to switch these names off, so you use the color and the legend, right? So depending on, again, what you prefer aesthetically, you can click each of the tags. So the tag is the text, okay, not this here, that's the actual area. The little crisscross itself is the area. So holding Control, I can pick all of them, or you can pick one and again use that exact same tool we used multiple times now. Pick all of them, and then down in the bottom of your screen you have a little pair of glasses, and you can say to either hide the element, that's everything you've selected, or the category. If you want to hide a wall or all of the walls, for example, the one you've selected or all of them. So we'll just say hide element and they all disappear. Okay, so you might like how that looks in terms of aesthetics. To bring them back, click the glasses and just say reset and they all come back again. So entirely up to you in terms of aesthetics. What do you prefer? What works for you? What looks better? What do you think looks better versus, yeah, is it too busy? Does it give the information you need? And so on. Okay. So pretty much in terms of Revit and area plans, etc., that would cover that. So before we move to Forma, does anybody have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. I'll just wait a little second, or we'll see how we deal with that. If not, then what we'll look at is what does the team do next and how do we then move to Forma with that. All good? Perfect. So let's have a look then at next steps. So you can then see what the ground would look like, the first floor, the second floor, and so on, right? As we kind of work through that. What you want to then do is take notes of these sizes, and somebody has to then recreate these in Autodesk Forma site design. So we'll add some basic annotation and dimensions, which we already looked at. So we can look at that as long as we know everything is the correct size. We'll look at the dimension tool. It's on wall faces. And we'll pick here to here. Okay, so 15245, right? And then, pardon me, along to here, we can look at some of these and how they fit. 353, right? Okay, so we're getting millimeter specific, right? But if we take some of these dimensions and then we add each of these in, it gives us all of the dimensions that we need, right? So I'll just roughly draw these back in and show you what I think it was going to look like, for example, right? So overall, what were we here? It was about, 52 by 15, right? So let's say that 53 by 15, something like that. And then it's 34 meters, and there's a little step in of 3 meters and so on. So there's multiple ways of recreating these, okay? So let's have a look at Autodesk Forma site design. Okay. So I mentioned this before, you might want one team to continue working on concepts. Not team, but members of your team. So if somebody is better at the conceptual side, maybe they continue working on another concept, right? An entirely new concept. Or each of you design a concept and then each of you can go to Forma and do this next part also. So you all decide how that works and how that sits for you, okay? I have two options here, so just make sure your option that you've selected is EU. For me is my license that's here. And then you're going to create new. So the idea might be, for this one, pick a site that you know, pick a site that is local to you, for example. It might be your college or your university campus. Think of what that might be, where that might be, why you would pick that. Think about things like road noise and traffic noise and how you might deal with that and show how you've dealt with it. If it's the absolute perfect site, it might be difficult to show how you've improved it. So maybe there are some problems with it. How might you improve that? And also, how does your building then sit on this site? So we've got a concept. We're going to try maybe 3 different positions on the site of how that building works on the site. And then we'll do the whole thing again with concept 2 and concept 3, depending on how many time you've got, concept 4, 5, and 6. And if you do that, you're going to show iteratively all of the concepts and how they developed and changed on Forma, okay? As well as how you built them in Revit or wherever you've built it. So if I say I want a new site, which site project it is, so sorry, create new project for this one, and then the site. So the project name is going to be, let's try, I'm going to call it my new university. So this is the new university, or we'll call it actually the Forma Training Hub. There you go. So it's the Forma Training Hub, we'll call this, right? So create. Now, this is the part for us we're looking at. Do you want to add other members to this? Do you want to bring in your friends into this? Is one login enough? Just log into it. We'll work with that. I didn't want to actually add anybody in. I need to add in. So let's go with Michael. Yep. And then we'll click invite. So as it loads, we have this new default interface for us. Now we want to go and create in terms of our site design. Okay. So if we think Forma site design, where is the site that you want? So you want to pick a site that you know. So I'm going to go and choose a site that I know. Okay. So I'm going to go to Glasgow, round about this area up here. I know the area that I want as well. Yep, around about this area here. Okay. So I know there's lots of development happening in this site, and I would like to maybe look at how I could improve that. If I scroll back, you'll notice you can see the full map, and it instructs you to zoom in to select the area you want. If you keep zooming in, and you keep zooming in, and you keep zooming in, the area becomes too small. So please bear that in mind when you choose your site. It would be really good to see context. So I would like this little triangular site here, so I'm going to place it in the middle. But I also want to see some of the buildings around it. I want to see the roads and how the site is actually impacted currently by just even its location and surrounding area. So once you have that, and it allows you to confirm the map area, let's click Confirm Map Area. And the first time you do this, it takes a couple of minutes just to build everything. It doesn't take super long, just takes a couple of minutes. And then it's going to prompt us to ask us which of the default libraries that we would like to add. So it's just creating the site. Lots of the information for it already exists online. The default buildings, the weather, for example, of the recorded weather for the site. And now Forma Site Design's tapping into all of that as well. So first thing would be, I would recommend you can add whatever you want, as much or as little as you want. The starter pack, if we look at that, it's going to add in. So if we say add, it's got the overture buildings and the roads. Okay, so it adds both in one step. Okay, so we'll click add. So these are free. It says order successful, but these are free to add. I'll close these down. So overture buildings, we don't need, we've just added them. And then the overture roads also, we've just added both of these by using the package, the little starter pack. Terrain. So does your site sit on a slope? So a lot of Glasgow is very sloped. So I'm going to click add for the terrain and we'll get some 3D terrain from this. We can look at other versions of that. So whichever version you would like to add. The flat, the roads, trees. So if there are already any trees that are recorded on the site, then we can add the trees. Okay, and you'll see it keeps returning back to here for me. Okay, and also if you want, there is the satellite image. Do you want to look at what it kind of looks like from above? If you to look from a Google Maps or Apple Maps or something like that, so you can add these in also. Okay, when you're done, click close up here. And there is going to be my default that I'm going to use this multiple times for multiple concepts, but I want to define where is my site and what already sits there, for example. Okay, so I know that this building sits there currently. I'm going to propose that it gets removed. So if you click on it, you'll see it goes purple. If you double click on it, it opens it for editing. And you can click the delete key, and then we'll try the other buildings also. Any of these that we don't want in the site. And I'm going to zoom in and see up here. I'm going to click on that and delete that also. So double click, open this little edit window to edit the base. And when you're done, you can click done. And now we have an empty plot that I can work in. I want to define that this is my site that I want to work in. And once I've defined it as my site, I might make multiple duplicate copies so that I only need to do this once. Okay, so it's going to be the same site for every concept. The concept might sit up here, the concept might sit down here or around here. How might it be affected by the different buildings on the site, the different conditions on the site, the noise level, etc. Okay. So we have up here, so we have the site limit in these tools. So we've got our create buildings, terrain pads and tree lines, etc. We've got roads. We already added the roads that are there. We've got some generic volumes and shapes and 3D concept sketches. Great and very aesthetic, but very difficult to measure. And then measure distance and so on. Okay. So the first thing for us is going to be to define our site limit. But I would like to look down in a plan view. So if I click here, 2D, it switches to a plan view. And if I click down here, this little compass, it rotates it for me. So it's north-south. Okay, I'll click it again and go back to a 3D view so we can rotate, just to show you again how we do that. Okay, so here, we're in 3D. If I click 2D, it switches to a 2D plan view. So it's looking straight down on the site. And then here, this little compass rotates everything. So it's north-south axis for me. Okay, so that helps a lot. North-south, I know that this is in the south. How might the daylight affect the building at lunchtime, for example? Okay, so here, if we go to that site button, I'm just going to zoom in. And then one click, and then another click, and you'll notice we're starting to then draw just quite approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to draw in and follow the boundary of my site. So here, if I zoom in, we can zoom in and click the points. If you add more points, then you can curve round about these roads and areas that are there. I'm going to come all the way out to this road that's at the front. And then here, if I went to here, you see we're missing quite a bit of this. So I'm just going to follow it, zoom in a bit. That allows me to pick here. And then along to this space. And then what you'll notice is when I click again in that first, you see it's still trying to go. When I click in the first position, it defines the site. So now the site is red and defined as my actual site. Why that's useful? When we do some analysis, we can ask it to analyze the entire model, or we can ask it to analyze only on the site itself. Okay, so that can take longer if we want to analyze the whole model versus just this site itself. So we've got proposal 1 that's there, as this is kind of called. We can look to rename that. So the 3 dots that are there, we can choose to rename, and we can just call this site. So this would be the site defined, for example. Okay, which means if I click the 3 dots, we can choose duplicate, and it comes along with the site. And for that, we can rename it as concept 1. You see? And then if we duplicate that, we might want to rename that concept 2 or concept 1, 2. Okay, so maybe it's a minor change that we make, for example. Maybe we just move it on the site, something like that. So with this site, if we double click on it, it's going to open up this one, and I would like some benchmark analysis. Okay, so maybe one of the things we want to do is, before we duplicate it, is add some road noise. Then we can do some analysis on it. Some of the analysis we might do, things like sun hours analysis. So if I pick that, we can pick certain dates, and you'll notice here is entire model. We'll see what the difference is. But if we try and pick 2 different days in the year, maybe the day that for your site it is the shortest day. Okay, so the one that has sunrise is quite late and sunset is quite early. So maybe something for me, if I go and Google that, something like January 10th, if I run the analysis, we can have a January the 10th analysis as a sun analysis. So we can do that. We can also do another where we would do something like July 23rd. So let's go and pick up something like today and then run another analysis, something like that. Okay, I should have allowed it to finish first. Once it's finished, then go and do another and change the date. But once we get the analysis, we can start to see what the analysis of this site might be, for example. So currently in progress. While it's doing that, we can start to look at some others. So daylight potential, we can run that analysis. The wind is currently set to be a rapid wind analysis. So we'll look at both, but we have the rapid wind analysis. That's just kind of estimating and showing the areas that are, we don't have anything uncomfortable wind-wise, that's good. What we do have are some very good for sitting and standing areas. Let's see how the building impacts that. So these orange areas are not comfortable. They're quite windy. So up here, for example, there's lots and lots of wind. Anywhere else? No, pretty much here. So we might want to think about where we locate the building away from these high wind areas, particularly the reception. We don't want to position the reception in a really high wind area. Maybe when the door is open to the reception, the wind blows in, so we maybe don't want that. We can look at solar photovoltaic, not so much right now, but daylight, sun and wind are the ones for us to really look at right now. And noise, we haven't defined the road noise, so we'll do that next and we'll look at this. Okay, so let's look at, we've got some sun analysis, view the results, sun hours. Yep. So what's your thoughts? What would you like to do with your design? Are you currently in a country that's really, really warm and you would like to protect from the sun? What we can do is we can use these inspect tools and we can select various points on the site and we can check currently which areas are getting the least or the most amount of sun. Okay, and you can use that to help you decide which part of the site you might want to use. And also we can think about how the sun rises. So if it rises and we have a building here, maybe this building that's existing is it's not going to allow us to get the early morning light. Is that an issue? We get the sunlight in the afternoon and then, yeah, nothing really blocks it until it sets in the evening. Okay. Should this building be much higher, then maybe that would also block it in the afternoon, for example. Okay, so view results we can look at. We don't have a building, so we don't know the sun daylight potential, but we can kind of guess from some of the other buildings that are there, the potential looking at how much or how little sun they're going to get and how, yeah, so this shape of a building, this L shape, might cause a lot of reduction in the amount of light that we get. Is that good? Daylight potential is the amount of light coming in that's going to stop us actually needing to use artificial lights. So how might we use that, for example? And we've already looked at the wind analysis, right? So looking at things like that, what happens, we did the 23rd of July both times. So what happens if we did that January 2nd? Oh yeah, of course. So the analysis actually wasn't 23rd of July. The analysis was because I ran it on the 23rd of July. It wasn't that date. So actually, if I go and look at the results, we're going to find this was the January one. There we go. So there's what we're getting for the amount of light now in January in Scotland. So if you're not from Scotland or the UK, you might be surprised to learn that we don't get an awful lot of sunlight in the winter. It's quite late sunrise and quite early sunset. So how might that affect your building? So thinking of in the summer where you thought this was a great place to position the building, maybe you only get 30 minutes of direct sun because the sun stays very low and this building that's here is going to impact. You see, it gets 6 hours, but actually it's going to impact my building if I locate it here. So there's a lot of that to take into mind. Okay, so thinking of that, I'm thinking this area out here looks quite good. What I might try and do is I do know this area. I'm going to start picking up like some of the roads, for example. We can cancel these out and we can start to look at the roads. So because we loaded the roads in, here, this little line is only for this one little stretch of the road. So you might want to pick up multiples of them. Okay, so you might want to pick up these as well. Once you pick up this little line, you can go down to here and we can edit to make changes. And I'll do this again for some of the others, but you can determine what the speed is on this road. So if we think that this is 50 kilometers an hour, and then what's the average daily traffic? This is a really busy road. Okay, so if I said something like 10,000 cars, 84% of them are in the day, 10% that early evening, and maybe 6% at night. Okay, and then we've got the advanced settings of sometimes at peaks, we've got a little bit heavier traffic. So that will populate when I ask it to generate noise. It will tell me that's a lot of car noise, right? And we can do the same thing. If I said done, just to show you how we initiated that, by picking one of these roads up. So I'm going to have to do all of the roads around the site that are used. So if I pick this one up, and the first time you have to click the edit base to make changes. Now you can populate this in here. So that road is 40 kilometers an hour. Maybe 5,000 or 6,000 cars travel along this road, but I need to populate the same thing. So 40 kilometers an hour, 5,000 cars and so on. So populating all of these, this little road here is a really small driveway, and there's maybe only 1,000, and it's a 20 kilometers an hour drive into a car park. So you can imagine the road noise from here might not be as loud as what you would find around this part of the site. And then these ones along here, it's a smaller one again. and we'll just make sure that we pick up them all. So 20 kilometers an hour and just like 1,000 or so travel up these roads. This one, it says is a road that's here. I would like to delete that. I don't want a road on my site. Okay, I'm taking that away. And then this one also, there's not going to be a road onto my site unless you would like to put a car park somewhere. Then you can add a road in. So you can look at roads here. If you would like to add some roads, you can add in some car parks and things along here, and then do the same thing and populate that. Currently, if I look at that, we can start to look at the noise analysis. Yeah, and we're starting to get then some road noise you can see in red. Okay, so we can increase this radius that we do if we want to. We can analyze a more detailed analysis. This is our quick analysis, remember. It's in the custom circle. We can set it to the site limit if we'd like it to do the entire site, and then do everything that's road and rail. We don't have any rail, maybe you do, but road, rail, total, and then do your analysis for that, and then see what your results are. Your results together, we saw this area was the darkest area, but it might help. You found this was the best area out here, but actually now we've added the road noise up here to the north of the site might not be super good. These are currently in progress, so we can wait and see what they look like. But I'm also imagining down and around here is not good because it's the main road. It's a very busy road and it has a lot of traffic going really fast. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of road noise in this area here. And what you can do is we can look at the results of these. Once we put our buildings in, we'll get to see that. Again, we can inspect and see, yep, 65 decibels near the front of that. It's reducing to, it's only 63. Yeah, okay, so maybe we want to be quite far away from this road that's here. We definitely want to be quite far away from this road down here. Okay, so this is the really noisy end of the road. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense in terms of how we're using that as a kind of benchmark analysis. How might that work, for example? So we go back to wind. It should give us that. Yeah. So what we want to start to look at then is what happens if we want to add in our building. Okay, so I'm going to go to concept 1. Let's open that up. It's doing its thing. There we go. So double click that, concept 1. Obviously the energy levels and everything are exactly the same as they should be. So we've got that sitting. I would like to redraw my building, so we can do that in 3D. I'll let you have a look at the different types that are there. So we have this kind of a line building or a more basic building. If you have that straight box, if you like, if you manage to get a building that looked a bit like this, then you're welcome to use that line building. Okay, we'll take it away just now and show you. So we've got line building. Again, maybe we want to see it in 2D. Maybe we want to see it in north to south. We might want to use this area up here. You know the size of your building. Maybe you want it running parallel to this road that's up here. So we said something like 60 meters. So if you manage to create a building that is 60 meters in your concept exactly, we can come back to here. You can see, using this building, that it is 12 meters wide. Okay, maybe you're 20 meters wide. We should have 3 stories instead of 4. So here I'm going to change this to 3, and you'll see that it's updating each time. So you just recreate your concept exactly as is. This is not mine. I'm going to show you how I would do mine in a little minute. Each of the floor levels might be 3 meters or 4 meters in between. And then just something that's there for to divide up the building, is the sections are 16 meters each, and then the last one obviously is not 16 meters, it's only making it up to 20 meters. Okay, so if you manage to create a building that is perfectly rectangular in footprint, a cuboid building, this is great for you. If you only manage that for one floor, then yeah, you can make it just one floor. Okay, and then it means as you want to, if you want to go and create other buildings, you can create other buildings on top of that. So maybe your building stepped in, let's say a little bit like mine did. So maybe it was 2 floors on top. And I'll go through this again step by step, but just showing you the different tools and what you might use them for that are there. Okay, and again, that's 12 meters. Excuse me. Maybe I want 15 meters and so on, right? Maybe it's exactly the same. It's just a shorter building, so it's 20 meters, whatever it might be. Okay, so your opportunity here is to recreate the building that you've agreed in and managed to create in Revit as you know it's the right size. Okay, so I like this spot in here. It looks pretty quiet. I thought it was good weather, etc. So let's try and recreate something like I was already creating earlier, right? So basic building. Okay, so not line building because I wasn't able to create a perfect rectangular or cube building, but we can go with basic building. Okay, so once we start to draw, this is why sometimes I like to do this part in 2D. I'll show you why, but if we start to create something like around about 60 meters, we can type in 60 and it's now locked to 60 meters, but I have no idea how this sits on the site. Is it perfectly level? So we'll do it again, we'll do it in plan view, but let's try, okay? So we click, and now I can start to draw the other face. So I know that my building was a bit stepped, right? So it was something like 20 meters, and you'll see in this corner up here, it's going to give me a 90 degrees symbol. I can click, then I can start to go this way for 20 meters. So by typing in 20, it locks it into place. And then I think it was something like 15 meters, right? Yeah, so 15 meters. And then we can draw along in this axis to here. So what that's showing me is that it's locked 90 degrees to this and that corner to here. And exactly the same as with the site, if I click on the original point, that's me got my building footprint. So exactly like the concept that I created, okay? And I'm going to draw, for me, 1 story. If you remember, my building was only 1 story high, okay, at ground level. So there's the reception area, the boardroom, the collaborative space, some of the meeting rooms, the staircases, however that might be shaped. Okay, and then I want to try the same thing for the second floor. So we are looking at the same tool. So basic building, and I can draw on the top. You'll notice it snaps to the top of the building. I forget, I think we had it. Let's go, we'll just simplify this and say it was that size. Okay, so something like that for my second floor. And my third floor was, if we do the same thing again, it all started in the same corner. Yeah, maybe 30 meters or so, something like that. And clicking in the start again is what defines that for me. So there might be my concept 1. Okay, sitting on the site, that might be my concept 1. And then I've got to think about analysing that. Okay, so in the analysis tools, we can start to look at now, what are the sun hours analysis? And again, I might try January 1st and run the analysis. Okay, then we can come back to that. So it's in progress. What about a daylight analysis? Okay, so we can start to look at what that might be. We can run the analysis, not the selection. We do the entire model. Run analysis, and then wind. So we want to pick up, yeah, something like that. What you'll notice now though is as it's doing a quick wind analysis, that's fine. If we are now to do the wind analysis detailed, it's going to take 30 minutes to 135 minutes because we're telling it to take into account the entire model. Okay, so as it does that, we can also now look at things like noise. Let's increase the noise circle. Again, it's going to work through that. We get the little custom circle that's there, site limits, but maybe analyze. Again, will take 2 to 10 minutes for that. And solar energy analysis. Okay, so again, entire model, and then run the analysis. Okay, so while it's doing that, you can go back and you can look at some of the other analysis that it's already created. So the one we've just done, we've got the view results. We can click view results. So this is January. It doesn't look super inviting, does it, in January? But it's probably the most that we can achieve. How do we prove that? By using the inspect tool. So we're not getting a lot of sun in some of these areas, like 0 on the north. That's to be expected. The sun sets about here, so we're not going to get an awful lot. But using the inspect tool, you can then record how much sun you're achieving on your building at different phases, right? So when you do concept 2 might sit, or concept 1.2 might be the same building on a different part of the site. Currently, I'm thinking this is pretty good. We've got the reception here. The reception is not in the north, which would be getting 0 sunlight, 0 minutes. So I'm thinking the reception, it's a lot more welcoming here. If you were to think about a car park, maybe the car park might be in this space around here, that type of thing. Please pay attention to these on the right-hand side. So while you've got these showing and telling me with the inspect tool how much you get, we get to see other things here as judges as well. So the ground receives like 11%, the facade receives 26%, roof gets 98% of all the sunlight for at least 3 hours. And then if you have another concept, which one are you selecting? Are you selecting the concept that gets most amount of sunlight, daylight, or least? And then justify why that might be. Are you in a part of the world where you try and limit the amount of direct sunlight, for example? And same, so let's look at daylight analysis. So if we look at a daylight analysis that we've already got, that it's running, there we go. So we can do a similar thing. It's really important on daylight analysis that you record the facade score. So we can look at the amount of your facade. 479 meters squared is achieving 37 plus, so a good score. It's getting a lot of daylight coming in. Versus 700% or 700 meters squared, sorry, that's getting 32 to 37. Still really good. These lower numbers are really, really low percentages, which is great. That's really good for us. We want the higher, the better, right? Unless you're trying to block the amount of light that's coming in, for example. So again, going back to if you're in a really warm, sunny climate, are you trying natural solar shading? If so, you need to be aware of the lower numbers are better for you. And then explain why as well. Okay, so we've got, if we pick these up, we can click inspect and then pick each of these spaces again, thinking about what the scores are around about reception. What do we see? So we're getting less daylight in reception. So maybe, should reception be moved further along? Do you use this as a reason to speak to your teammate that's in Revit and asking them to move the reception to here or here? Okay, what happens if you move that space? What happens to the concept? The shape has remained the same if you replace it with a room that's the same size. So maybe it's just location that's changing. So you need to update your area plan. But don't disregard your first area plan. Keep that because you want to show that you used Forma to impact the design. Okay, so if you look at this and think, there's not a lot of daylight here, maybe we don't want the reception to be in this corner, maybe we want to move the reception to here, then what space are you going to put here? Is it a storeroom? Is it the stairwell? Is it some space that doesn't necessarily need a lot of light? The boardroom is over here. We would like a lot of light in the boardroom. We want a lot of light in the meeting rooms, for example, that open plan space. So what rooms, the print room, the server, might you put them there? What happens on the north? Yep, so the spaces on the north get more light than this little corner in here. Okay, so I'm going to use that to influence my area plan. I don't need to run a new analysis because I might just swap some spaces around. If it's different spaces and different sizes, then you might need to change this model and call it concept 2 or concept 1.2, something like that. Okay, and then we have our wind analysis. It's given as a rough wind analysis. We can run a full analysis, but it's going to take half of an hour. So even if we clicked it to start it, we can come back in half an hour and see what the wind analysis is doing. Okay, but we have some really nice, comfortable spaces here. So looking at the legend, these are comfortable for sitting. Then we have standing and strolling. There's nothing that I see. We've got some walking here. So as long as you're walking, you don't find the wind speed uncomfortable. There's nothing on this site that seems to be uncomfortable winds. Okay. A detailed analysis will show us which direction they're coming from and how we might protect against them. But actually, this is showing us a really nice area. If you wanted to go further with your Revit model, with your design, and talk about this is the area where you would position seating, you can back that up. You can support that with a screen capture of this image, right? So here, lots of seating, absolutely. Along here, maybe some seating. Over here, definitely not seating. And then around here, there are some trees, so standing seems okay, maybe sitting or standing around the trees. Maybe this is the walkway we use up and into the campus. Okay, all coming from our outcomes from the analysis. So it's not just a guess. We've put the building here and we think this is the best place where we would position something or access the site, whatever that might be. Okay. How's noise? Let's have a look at the noise analysis. It's looking okay. If we increase that, do we have the analysis for this? Yeah, okay. So this is a main road. We spoke about this. This is a main road. So we have something like 73 decibels. That's quite noisy. We have something like 70 decibels here. That's quite noisy. How is that impacting your building? Here, 60 decibels. Okay. What you'll notice is here on the site, maybe this way, we've got 50 decibels and 56 decibels on the site. So maybe this would be a good orientation for the building. But what happens to solar? What happens to sun? What happens to wind? What happens to daylight? So that might be what I would like to try as concept 2. So we have a boardroom here, right? The boardroom is getting around about 60 decibels of noise level. So is that loud? I don't know. So Google it, go and search what is 60 decibels of sound? How much sound might that be versus 50? So it's 59. It doesn't say it's uncomfortable, but it's definitely not on the lower end of the yellows or greens. So what might that be? Okay, so is that workable for a boardroom? Is that too noisy for a boardroom? We have the same up here, 61 decibels. What did we say was going to go here? Might that be a good position for staircases, the lifts, the toilets? So then you therefore have a buffer that the noisy rooms that you would expect might go on this side, and then the quieter rooms might go on this side. So might the boardroom be better positioned here? And there, what position would you, or which rooms would you then locate and position here? Okay, so justifying everything gives the judges an opportunity to look at your design, but obviously how you've also interrogated that design. Okay, how have you then shaped your design? So if we look at photovoltaic, the solar panels, you might be told that the coverage is more like 80%, the panel efficiency might be 20%, or look to the brief and see whatever you're being told. It's only for roofs. We haven't put any solar panels on any of the faces of the buildings. But what we can start to look at is what happens to the kilowatt hours per meter squared. Because we've stepped the building up, we've obviously got some shadow. You'll also have what is your average total solar energy. And obviously, as we start to do that, when you do your analysis, if you set them early before you run the analysis, you can then go in and check what's your total going to be. Okay? Kilowatt hours, this is the number, 287 million, so kilowatt hours. So for this concept, okay? So if I'm taking a screenshot of this, I'm making sure that that is in the screenshot. So I've got 287 million kilowatt hours. So what does that mean in terms of my concept? Can I improve it? Okay, so how might I improve it? We might look at concept 2. Okay, so concept 1, we know. Concept 2, if I open that, so we go to concept 1, it will remain. If I go to concept 1, 2, maybe it's the same building sitting in a slightly different place. I'll just do something. Let's do what I was saying earlier. Let's do, so we're in 2D, looking straight down. We've got north-south activated. So I would like my building actually to sit, I'm going to pick down to like here. Yeah, we'll pick about here. We'll pick here. So I'm just going to do a rough concept this time. So something like this. I think it looks too big actually, but yeah, let's go with this. I'll just do as 2-story this time. So we have the building is actually sitting into the terrain, as we can see. That will impact that. Okay, so maybe there's a foundation level or something to it. We'll say 1 meter. Okay, so you'll notice in this floor I'm making it 1 meter. So it's like a foundation level just to set up the story of the building. So we've got 2 stories sitting up in here. 1.5 maybe. Yeah, just to lift it up a little bit. So if this was my second concept, this is looking really quite large actually. So let's see about bringing some of this back. Yep. And then maybe on top, we'll do that basic building. One story. Yeah, so it's a totally different concept, okay? It doesn't need to be for this concept. It could be this concept that's here, rotated for 90 degrees. I'd like to just go and do something completely different and see how it actually impacts everything on the site. Okay, so I have my analysis to do again. So sun analysis, pick the best day, pick the worst day. So again, it was like January 2nd, I think we did. Run the analysis. Daylight, we want to run that analysis. Just be aware that it's how it's set, if it's going to be set to the entire model. This one was entire model. The wind, site limit. The noise, again, we've got selection, we want site limit. And the solar analysis, entire model. So just make sure you're running the same tests. So if you've got entire model done for concept 1, then run analysis for entire model for concept 2 as well, and so on and so on. And I might then also pick up, so we'll do like July, 21st of July, we'll just do that. So run analysis. So I've got a comparison for a really sunny day versus a not so sunny day. Okay, so we did get this one. Okay, so we've got that sitting in there because I set it and changed it. We'll look at the sun hours analysis for that. And then our daylight, etc. as well. Let's see if it's doing that okay. Yeah, it's done that one okay. So we can now do a comparison that you've already got the other one. If you think, where is your reception this time, right? So maybe reception is here. What are the different scores? Look at the scores here in the facades this time. So we're actually getting really much higher scores for this shape of building, or the orientation of the building it might be. Okay, so around here, around here. So we're getting much higher scores. So are you then saying that that's a better design? I appreciate we're getting much higher scores because this is a much bigger building. It's too big. I appreciate it's too big, but it lets you see the facade, the number of the facade that's getting these higher scores. So even if we made it a smaller building, the scores are really, really high. Okay, what happens to wind? So we start to look at that quick analysis for the wind. Yep, there we go. And immediately I'm going to notice something. There is not so many spaces for positioning benches and seating that are in the comfortable for sitting position. So maybe around about this space here. As I said, we'd still need to do like a long-term analysis, a more detailed analysis on that. But it's looking like for the wind, this is not as good if you want to position seating outside. Okay. However, that gives you another advantage. If the wind is reduced enough that it's no wind and it's really comfortable to sit here, what that does is it reduces the wind on the facade of the building if you would like to talk about natural wind ventilation. So if you want to use air conditioning, you don't need wind. If you want to use natural ventilation, opening windows and doors or ventilation through the air vents, then you don't actually want to surround your building with no wind. That would be the sitting, right? That would be really, really low. So actually this building might work better for natural ventilation. That might work. What about our solar analysis? So solar PV. Yep, it ran that. We've now got, again, so it's like total energy, 287 million, blah, 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 blah. So something to note with that 287 million, if I zoom back, do you notice it's coming from like the entirety of Glasgow? Do you see? So these are all of the buildings that's generating that. What we need to do, first of all, might be inspect, and we can see what areas are producing the best, or where might we not put solar panels. We might not put them here. So that might only be 60% of the roof that's covered. We still might use 20% efficient panels. But when you run your analysis, maybe pick site limit. Okay, so this time if I do the analysis, I'm going to get my building only. So my building, I can then check what does my building generate in kilowatt hours over the entire year, and then compare that directly to concept one. Okay, oh, it's stopped. So we can try again. Run the analysis. Yeah, we'll see if that runs. That can also work if you want to look at the things like your daylight potential and so on. Make sure that if you want to see the entirety of the site, everything that is surrounding, you want to pick up the entire model. If you don't want that and you want to look at just your model, then you pick in here, we'll do site limit. Okay, and it will say selection here. We can close that. So when we run the analysis, it begins the analysis. In progress, that's good. And we'll get just this building, not everything else. Okay, so view the results. There we go, of just this building, for example. It's not picking up the sun hours for some reason for this building. And then we do the same thing with daylight. So just this building, let's say, but let's try. So it should pick it up. Yeah, so it's not picking it up right now. Don't know why. Let's see. The one earlier was everything, right? Yep, we've got all of it. We want to deselect that. It should just be, if we do entire model, we get everything. If we do site limit, it should be picking this up. Let's try it as we'll stick a line building in and see if it picks up the building itself. Run the analysis. We'll see if it picks that one up. It might just be how I created the concept. Other than that, we will have a concept one. We'll have a concept two. It's your opportunity to go back and look at the Revit model. So if you think this concept, something more like this might work, let's go back. Analysis completed. Yeah, it picked them up this time. So now what I might do is just delete this one and then rerun the analysis, because I'm going to get a fake number. So now if we just run the analysis, there we go. No idea why that didn't work, but we've fixed it. And all I did was create a new building and run it and then just delete that building, but let's see if it works. So in progress right now, this is going to be really beneficial for me deciding which concept I want to go forward. Yeah, so I've got, from this building only, you'll notice none of the other buildings are lit up orange, so it's only this building, total energy, 2,310,000 kilowatt hours. Okay, so how might that compare? So 2.3 million, we can go to the other concept. And when we run that analysis, we'll do the site limit and we'll run the analysis and we'll check for this building. So 2.3 million versus, if we want to look at solar gain, solar photovoltaic energy that we can produce, 1.5 million is the difference. Okay, so for that concept, 1.5. What might the difference be? Yeah, I think I created a building that was too big in the other concept. But if it was 1.9, then it gives you a scope for the other building is better because it gives you more solar photovoltaic energy. If that's interesting to you. How did it score in sun hours analysis? How did it score in daylight potential? How did it score in wind? So you have to argue for all of these. You can't get the best building in the world scoring all of these. You might get the best sun hours and solar photovoltaic energy, but it might be terrible for wind. It might be terrible for noise. Maybe you get the best noise cancelling area of the site, but it doesn't give you the most amount of sun, for example. Okay? And then the scope all repeats again. So you would then go back to Revit and File, New, create a different concept. So this concept can work as concept 1 and concept 1.2 because it's maybe just the same concept sitting on the site a different way. Maybe it sits like we discussed. Maybe it sits here. If we rotate that, maybe if we just do it as a line building and said, maybe this was my concept and it sits here. Maybe this was my concept and it sits here. Maybe, let's pick it up again. This was my concept and it sits here, or this could have been my concept and it sits here. Okay, that's the same concept. That would be concept 1. So concept 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, it's the same concept, it's the same arrangement of spaces, it just sits on different parts of the site. And here you would have concept 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, because it's the same concept. Okay. In Revit, if you then wanted to change your concept, you then need a new building, so a new project. It's just repeat the steps that we've recorded from the start, but this time, maybe instead of, what did we make it, 60 meters or so, maybe we want to go 30 meters by 20 meters. Okay, what's that going to do to the inside space here? How much daylight do you think is going to get here? So do you make this the stairs and the bathrooms and the storage and the printing and the server and have all the rooms around it? Do you have lots of circulation space walking around here? That type of thing. So once you've got an entirely new concept, you repeat the whole process. This is then concept 2. Okay, and then you can duplicate the site and call it concept 2. Concept 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and so on. Okay, so that is the entire process all the way through. And then you are going to compare each and you're going to decide how best to present that. Through screenshots, you will get more information on how to submit that. If it's a poster, if it's PowerPoint, if you do it in a document, however you do that, and then you print everything off as a PDF, one combined PDF document where you show all of your concepts as best you can. Okay, so the areas, the entirety of the area, showing that it is the size it's meant to be. You might want to look at the 3D if you create that in Revit. We spoke already about how you might want to pick up all of the walls. Do you prefer how it looks when it looks like this, for example? Okay. So think about presentation, think about what it might look like, what you might display. Do you want to display it as the ground floor plans? Do you want to display it as the ground area plan? The area plan might sit at one part and beside it might be a 3D, which communicates the building, and then that goes to form a site design. And then in form a site design is your analysis. There really is a lot to be earned, maybe the right word, by showing that you can come in here and evaluate a concept and then go back to Revit and change your concept. So change some spaces or change the orientation or change some of the rooms down here you might feel deserve to be in the upper level, wherever that might be. This was reception, we saw that. What if it's too noisy? What if it's too dark? Show that you were able to use Forma site design to actually influence or get to the best design. Okay, so start to think how you can do that. How can you use Forma site design to actually design the building? So this is the first concept, that's great. How has Forma shaped that to change? So concept 1 becomes concept 1.2 and 1.3. Okay, concept 2 is entirely different. It's something completely new, but how does that change? So what's concept 2.2 and concept 2.3? What does that look like? Was it shaped because of the results from here? Okay, and show all of them. Don't be scared to put them all in. If it's a poster, if it's Word, PowerPoint, whatever it is, you're going to PDF the whole thing anyway. You'll be rewarded for putting in all of even the terrible ones that you think this did terribly. Put it in and show the results and why you then didn't use it to go forward. Okay, so that's the tutorial part over. What I wondered was, are there any questions at this point, clarifications? Is there anything that anybody wants to see specifically again? Okay, is there anything anybody wants to work through and do a little step by step? We can have a break if anybody wants to stay on and do a little step by step for maybe an hour. I'm more than happy to do that. But equally, I don't want to take up anybody's time. You have the recording. If anybody wants to try it and work through it and see that it works or it doesn't work, we are having another session. Maybe in that other session between now and then, you could work through it. We're going to do a similar thing, and that can maybe also be a good opportunity to do some question and answers as well. But I thought I'll open the floor if anybody has any questions at this point. And I can see with the daylight now, Vanessa, do you see the sunlight coming in?
Yes, you can really see absolutely from a few hours ago. Yeah, big
Yep.
change. Yeah, amazing.
So it's a big thing for us of think about your daylight, think about the daylight informa, the daylight score. The higher the score, the better, I think, because I don't need natural light. I don't need artificial lights on in this room now. They just switch off. So I don't see any questions coming in. It must have been pretty easy to follow. Apologies if it was below anybody's level, because there'll be people who've never used Revit area plans before. There'll be people who've never used Forma site design before. If you have, hopefully that gives you a good understanding of what to do with it and which direction to go with it. Other than that, it's really just experiment and try and recreate some office buildings, schools, a building you might like to see and use as a student. Go for it.
I think we might have one question there, Michael.
Okay.
It hasn't come through yet. So I'm just, I have a question. So if you want to go ahead and type the question into the chat, we will answer it live.
Sounds good.
I'll just give that a few moments.
Hopefully that was nice and slow and everyone was able to understand my broad Glasgow accent, but hopefully. The learning materials that are signposted as well pretty much cover most of that as well. So other than we have this recording, we also have the learning materials as well on the Autodesk learning site. So lots and lots of resources.
Absolutely, guys. If you want to head on to the Buildathon website, there is a lot of content there, as I mentioned this morning, and we are posting we're posting different tips and tricks on a weekly basis as well for the app. So I'm going to share.
I've just got that question through.
Great.
So can we use a previously occupied site like you started with? Yes. The site does not need to be empty. What you might want to do, you noticed I opened the site that was there, and then if I go back to that, let's see just now, I'll just pick this one up again. But what I did was I chose the site and I deleted the buildings and then I did my analysis. What you might want to do is define the site. And if you want to keep the existing building and do the analysis, you can. And then you can delete that building, the existing building, and create your concept and show how maybe it improves. The only difficulty I would say is you're going to be given a brief of rooms with constraints and limits. So it's up to you if you want to do some analysis on the existing building, that's fine, but it won't be the same type of building. It's definitely going to be a different building, different spaces, different site uses. So the way I did it was I deleted the buildings and then analysed the site. But yeah, you're more welcome to do that. You're welcome. Yeah, and that is a big thing. If people are not already registered, or you have friends, colleagues, students that you know that you would like to register, I would do that as soon as possible so that you get time to practice. And for you all that are in the call or receiving the recording via email or whatever, I would suggest practicing what I've been doing. It's going to be really, really similar. You just won't know the brief, you won't know the rooms, the type of building, and the constraints. Practice this as often as you can. You will notice that the thing that took me the most time is just organizing the spaces so that you can have them within the constraints, but make the building as big as possible. Because the bigger it is, the more solar photovoltaic energy we get, the more better daylight scores we get, this type of thing. So yeah, what you can't have is empty, unoccupied spaces. So beside the print room, just a big empty space. Yeah, the exterior of the building has to be wrapping all of the spaces. But practice. Definitely practice this at least twice. If you can practice more, even better. I would suggest that having run similar things in the past, students that practiced at least twice tend to do quite well. So please practice. Why do we create different levels before modeling? Why do we create different levels? Do you mean the spreadsheet? This was just my guess. So if I will share that again and show you how I attempt it. This doesn't mean you need to attempt it in the same way. Wrong one, let's grab this. So what I was trying to do here was I maybe set myself a limit of 600 square meters. Maybe I change it. Maybe I make it 400 and I try again with 400. But if I've got 600 square meters of a boundary limit, I'm trying to see which spaces I can get in different levels. So ground floor, the ground floor is going to, well, all of them going to have stairs, right? The ground floor for me would also have reception. Yep. So what I want to do is I want to grab all of this and then move it down to the ground floor, for example. So the reception should be there. And I would also argue that the plant room should be on the ground floor. It's got a boiler, it's got very heavy equipment. It doesn't need to be. It can be located elsewhere, the plant room. So that's entirely up to you. But I've tried it this way to try and give me some understanding of how much space I'm going to need. So if I've said one breakout room, maybe 50 meters, so or 49 meters squared, 7 by 7, 5 meeting rooms, or maybe the next time I'll say only 3. So in here, I'm going to say 3. So I need 3 meeting rooms, 30 meters each. So I need 90 meters, right? Maybe I can fit all of them on the ground floor. Maybe I can't. So I might end up saying I'm going to have 2 here and then I'll add 1 to the top floor. So I've got 1 up there, that type of thing. This is just me in my own way trying to design which spaces would take up the most amount of space in each of the various levels. That's it. If you're given a boundary of 600 square meters and you're told the maximum height of the building might be 12 meters. Okay? So if you've got a story height of 3 meters, you can get 4 stories. If you've got a story height of 4 meters, you can only get 3 stories. So the limitations will come from the brief from Vanessa and the team. You and your team can then work out what's the best way. You won't manage to get everything in one level. You will have to do over 2, 3, 4, 5, however many levels you're allowed, and however many it fits. So imagine it said you've got 50 offices to put in, 20 meeting rooms, right? This becomes a huge building. You can't fit all of them on the ground floor. So I'm practicing myself. This is how I practice. I'm not taking part. But I am practicing because I do quite enjoy doing this kind of thing. I might also try and take part and then compare my entry against each of yours. I'm quite competitive, so maybe I won't. I can't win. This is a good thing, but I doubt that I would, and maybe I couldn't take the embarrassment. But I would practice this however you would like to do it as much as possible. So once you figure out how with one reception and 5 meeting rooms and 5 offices, what if it was only two? What if it was 10? How might that affect the difference? Instead of 600, what about 700 or 800 or 1,000 or whatever? Okay. Maybe the story height changes. Instead of 600, maybe it becomes 20 meters high. You're allowed. You should experiment as much as you can, and then you'll get used to this type of layout, this type of exercise, let's say. Okay, so that's why I did the levels like that first, and then I started creating within Revit. The other question might be with this part, if I just go back to share, or the other part of it might be, yep. So I said File, New, and I chose the architectural template. I think it's important you choose like the architectural template. I'll show you why, but yep. So the first thing I then did was these levels, right? Yeah. So we had level 0, we had level 1. Yeah, you cannot level, you can't create up to the roof level because it doesn't exist. Okay, so if you remember, level 0 and level 1 exist. I called them base level 00, accept all the prompts and it renames it. Level 01, yes, and then I created along here the levels themselves. So the reason I'm creating, I'll show you, if I create this, what I haven't done is the roof level, right? If I start to draw, and here I can connect from ground to level 1, great, that's perfect. So I could create that. When I go to level 1, I can create walls up to level 2, that's perfect. Okay, so maybe I do this. These don't fit, but there's level 2. What I can't then do is, as we kind of go up to it, is where did that go? Right? Went to level 2. I don't have a level 2 here, right? Because it's black and white. So if we add that, and these are all in the steps from the very beginning, we can add that to the view. And if I then try and draw another level, I can't tell it to pick the roof level because it doesn't exist. So that's why you create all of those levels first. So before you start to model, before you start to draw, you should have level 0, 1, 2, roof, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roof, whatever you're actually allowed to have in the brief, and you can experiment with these yourself. Question is, how do you determine the width of the circulation corridor? That will be given. That will be in the brief. You will get a maximum that the corridor should be, or it might say all corridors should be exactly. If it's 2400 millimeters, then whatever it's to be. Okay, so all of the corridors have to be the width that you'll be given. So you'll be told that in the brief. With the other rooms, you get a maximum. The room's 30 meters maximum. It can be smaller than that, but the maximum it can be is 30 meters. That's fine. But the corridor, it will tell you the size it has to be, and it needs to be that size. It's a good question, a couple of good questions. So, okay. Well, I think we're done then. Should be nice and easy to follow.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're
That
more
was,
than welcome.
that was a wonderfully interactive walkthrough. And guys, I hope everybody, got a lot of benefit from being here live this morning, this afternoon. And to those of you who are here in the middle of the night, thank you for staying with us through to the very end. I have sent a couple of links into the chat as well. The first one is the competition app. I had mentioned it earlier. Please do register. We will be sending tips, and it is worth your while to be on that. And the second thing is there is an email address specifically designed for this competition, buildathon@knowledgepoint.com. So if you want to reach out to us on that, we will help you over the next few weeks. Um, I will be sending the the timings on email to all of you in relation to the technical briefing. That will be taking place on August the 18th, and that will be taking place across 4 different time zones, 8 a.m. in each time zone. So I will communicate with each and every one of you to let you know about that well in advance. Um, and yes, all I can say is the very best of luck to everybody. And it was wonderful to have you all here.
Can I just ask, do you remember the date of the next session we're going to host?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to host another session in English, Michael. It's going to be on August the 6th, and
There
it
you
will
go.
be
So
2 p.m. GMT.
if the people who are in this one want to go and practice, we can then do a similar thing. We'll have new entries, and they'll want to see exactly what we've just done there. So we'll do a similar thing. But at the end of that, we could do some Q&A. If anyone is having any specific difficulty, I'll quite happily help. What we won't do is give you advice on what's the best design. That's you. It's technically, you're maybe trying to add levels or the levels don't show up, or yeah, if you're trying to do something that's maybe, I think I've covered everything in all the steps that you need, but if there's something missing or something's not working, then we'll happily just go over that with you at the time. And if you're trying and something isn't working, just jump ahead, just do the next part and the next part, and yeah, just do whatever you can do and try and go over the bits that maybe are sticking with you. And I'm glad it was worthwhile. I appreciate that comment. Okay.
Great. And I've just sent that link up onto the chat as well, so everybody should have it. And there is multiple training sessions on there. But if you want to
Yeah.
repeat performance in English with Michael, he will be live again, as we said, August the 6th at 2 p.m. British summer time.
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa.